Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to Annie and Elsten. So happy to be with you today. I'm Annie Heilbrand. Got a little bit of a different show today. Craig Elsten is out sick. Everybody send him your good, healthy, get well better vibes. It's been going around. I get it. And he's been burning the candle at both ends, especially with his soccer's work and his podcast. So we want to send our best wishes to Craig Elsten. He'll be back here possibly tomorrow, maybe more towards the end of the week, depending on how he feels. But we're hoping that he feels better very soon and he's not catching any big bugs out there. So stay healthy, guys. I know it is going around. But I'm pleased to be joined today by Braden Suprenant. How are you, Braden?
Doing well, Annie. I'll be on the YouTube stream shortly because of the computer decided to reset right before we started the show. But aside from that, everybody on the radio waves can hear me. I'm here, ready to go. Excited to co-host with you. Should be a fun show today. I know you got a lot planned and looking forward to getting in some NFL talk, some Major League Baseball talk, and pretty good Padres segment that you came up with as well that we'll get into.
Yeah, we have a lot of diversified talk in these few hours. And actually, I'm here for half the show. Braden takes over for the second half of the show as I work on a few things for Salute to Champions still. So we're making it work. You know, this is a team thing. Sometimes some of your players, they need to sit for a while and someone else comes in and they do a great job. And so we love that. And we're also joined. You see him on the chat. You hear him on air. You see him on social media by Adam Klug. Adam is producing, right, Braden?
Yes, he is.
What he's doing?
He is producing.
Adam, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Well, we're just great. Do you like being in this chair, Adam?
Not particularly.
Well, we're happy to have you. We're happy for a great show, and we have a lot to talk about. We will be talking Padres. We'll be talking NFL. We'll be speaking with Ross Tucker right around 11:40. He is the Audacy NFL insider. We've got plenty to discuss from the games that we had last weekend, as well as the upcoming Super Bowl. But I would love to get started with a topic that's been on my mind. And since I have the floor today, very excited to get into this topic. So you might know her. You might have heard from her. She might have told you to calm down at some point, perhaps to shake it off. I am talking about the one and the only Taylor Swift. And you cannot go 5 minutes these days without hearing about Taylor Swift or seeing her relationship with Travis Kelce or hearing people yelling about how much time she's getting or yelling at people for yelling about how much time she's getting. It's caused a lot of angst inside of the NFL sphere, but also inside of sports culture and pop culture. So I want to get into some of the numbers and I want to get into some of the facts that we have here around our girl Taylor Swift. So it's actually a really interesting story if you dive into it a little bit. You don't have to be a Swiftie to pay attention to the business side of this and the way that Taylor Swift has sort of taken over this media environment and this NFL environment and shaped it a little bit this last month. You don't have to like her music. You don't even have to like her, but you got to kind of appreciate what's been going on here in terms of the money, the numbers, and the changes that this platform has seen since she got into the picture. So instead of just going on and on and on about how you like Taylor Swift, you don't like Taylor Swift, Braden, we're just going to take a look at some of the facts. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to dive into this Taylor Swift subject.
Okay.
You're very passionate about this last night. So
I was very passionate about this. I wanted to talk more about it yesterday, but I didn't feel the connection from you guys. So since I got the floor today, I'm going to go ahead and go into it. All right. So the business savvy. Here you have Taylor Swift, right? She has been a global pop superstar. She had her Eras tour. We know the music. We're hearing it right now, right? Probably the biggest event of this last year has been her Eras tour in terms of pop culture. Okay, so she starts dating Taylor Swift starts dating Travis Kelce.
Right.
In the middle of this, okay? And there's all that, hype around that and drama around that. But she starts going to the games. This will actually be her 13th game of the season if she makes it to the Super Bowl, which we can get into. But people start paying attention to her influence at the games, and you start hearing people talking about she's on TV too much. You're looking at her too much. You're putting the shots on her too much. Okay. The New York Times did a story. She's only on, guys, an average 25 seconds over a 3-hour plus broadcast. They've done the numbers. Everything now these days is analytics. They've taken the averages. Maybe they cut to her a bit much, but think about how much the Padres cut to Emma Stone when she's in attendance. Think about how much the Dodgers cut to their celebrities who are behind home plate, or the Lakers, right? So it's the same thing, okay? Kelsey Gear, get this, a 400% increase. So that is a tip in merchandise sales, okay? So Kelsey Gear, 400%, it's gone inflated since she's been into the NFL. Not really showing her all that much. You can debate whether they should show her at all. But since she's been coming to games, the NFL has had its highest regular season viewership among women since it began tracking in 2000. So you've got the numbers going way up among women viewers, but then the numbers going up among viewers in general, okay? So the Chiefs game have broken records for viewerships over the last few weeks. We've seen they've had the most streaming records for the game that they had on Peacock. All of that, that's been the Chiefs games. They've broken records among women, but they've also broken records among the general audience. Here's the number that you want to pay attention to. Research by the Apex Marketing Group says Swift's association with the NFL has added the equivalent of around $330 million in brand value to the Chiefs and the league. Now, I am with many of you guys who are listening. I hate more money and more viewers going to the NFL because we have seen firsthand what the NFL is like in many instances. It leaves you with a very unsavory taste in your mouth. And I, of course, covered the Chargers' move to Los Angeles. I will never look at the NFL the same way after reporting on that and seeing what I saw go on behind the scenes. So I'm not saying it's great that the NFL is getting so much more money or so many more viewers. I'm just saying it's the reality. Okay. So you can hate this woman. You can say this is so annoying. And I get that. You don't like her music. I get that. But if an organization is making 330 plus million and you're breaking records for viewership left and right, and you're really only showing her maybe 25 seconds out of a 3-hour plus game. I think CBS just did the numbers, the last game that they had, the AFC Championship game for the title. I think they had her on for like 40 seconds for that or something like that. So I get the argument. You don't want to see her at all. Some of you, I get the argument. You don't like her music, but in terms of money and business savvy and what this is doing for the NFL, it is gold. You would want this sort of thing to happen for a baseball player. I would love to get your thoughts on what baseball player should date which celebrity so that the same sort of, uptick happens in MLB. But any league would take this any day of the week. It's essentially free marketing for them. And it is kind of interesting too. Taylor Swift has said that she won't do the halftime show. They've asked her many times for the Super Bowl, and for whatever reason, she hasn't done it. Will this change things? Will she just be writing songs about football breakups next year or the year after and hate the NFL? And we're going to hear all kinds of cliche football lines in her music. That could be as well. But the business savvy, the fact that she's going to end up in Las Vegas, I believe very fully she's going to end up back at that Super Bowl after her game her concert in Tokyo, and then go to her concert in Australia. She's brought a lot of money in. Braden, are you a Swifty?
I'm not a Swifty.
Adam, are you a Swifty?
My kids certainly are, so I hear a lot of her music.
I wouldn't consider myself a Swifty, but like I said before, I'm appreciative of all music. She's more like when I was in high school, she was coming around as like very popular, and it was more country, and now it's very much pop.
Yeah.
She has some pretty good songs. I mean, not gonna lie, but I'm not I don't have any Taylor Swift on my Spotify. I will say that.
I have Taylor Swift on my Spotify.
I'm sure you do. That was the one request you had for bumper music that I haven't put in yet.
I'm more of the new school for Taylor Swift, not so much the old school. You want to guess which Padres player loved Taylor Swift? I'm talking like loved. Does anybody know?
I would guess Fernando.
Not Fernando. It's an older player. Like years and years ago.
So you're not talking about Craig Stammen.
Not Craig Stammen, although
Austin Hedges.
Austin Hedges.
That doesn't surprise me.
Austin Hedges really, really loved Taylor Swift and knew most of her songs, and probably still does. And we don't hate on that because she's Taylor Swift. Listen, she's got the money. She's got the popularity. She's able to do this. She's bigger than the NFL, if you ask me. She's bigger than any sports league. Okay.
She's bigger than the NFL for sure. And it's a good thing if you're the NFL, this is great because now you have, like as you mentioned, a brand new audience. of people, a lot of Swifties, a lot of young females that are very interested in seeing Taylor Swift. They're going to pay attention to the National Football League a little bit more so than just showing up for a Super Bowl party. It's the best case scenario for the NFL when it comes to marketing and getting their product out there and getting eyeballs on televisions. I mean, how many Taylor Swift prop bets are there going to be during the Super Bowl? And how many women are going to be even more engaged in the game than usually are? It's going to be a huge thing for the National Football League. It's how every TV station does it and how every radio station does it. Anybody that's in content understands that your target audience is always going to be there. They're always going to support your product. Padres fans are always going to watch the Padres, but how do you get the non-Padres fans to watch? So if you're the National Football League, the diehard NFL, fantasy football, people that have grown up watching football their whole lives, they're going to watch the game regardless if Taylor Swift's on for 25 seconds or not. But there might be some people that have never watched an NFL game ever. But Taylor Swift's going to be on TV at a sporting event. I'm going to talk about how Taylor Swift is probably better than the game as a big Swiftie. Yeah, those people are going to watch. And it's all about eyeballs on the television and ears to the radio. And it's great marketing for the National Football League to have, by the way, one of their most marketable players in Travis Kelce.
That's true too.
Who has a great marketing team. Before they won the Super Bowl last year, do you know what they did? His marketing team, they were already on the phone with Saturday Night Live. They were already on the phone with Saturday Night Live. Like, we got to get Travis Kelce on Saturday Night Live, who at the time NBC had the Super Bowl. And they said, well, if he wins, he'll host. Already had it in the bag 7 weeks out from winning the Super Bowl. You know what he does? He goes on Saturday Night Live. If Travis Kelce doesn't go on Saturday Night Live, is he with Taylor Swift right now?
Right.
Who knows? Right. And is he on every commercial? Is he on every commercial in between breaks? I mean, he is on every commercial. It does, and he's on more than Mahomes. Yeah. Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And it's a quarterback-driven league. And who's the main spokesperson for almost every commercial in the National Football League? Well, the tight end, Travis Kelce.
Right. So he has become a celebrity in his own right? And Charisma in the chat, I care more about the NFL more now with Taylor, she's saying, than when the Chargers were in town. And I bet there's other women that feel the same way. Not that there weren't women Charger fans, there absolutely are and were, but she has breathed new life into it. And Satan's Blowfish, of course, always in the chat. If Swift dated an MLB player for 1 year, she would breathe 10 years of life into the Major League Baseball league. That's how bad MLB marketing has been. And that's another story, right? Is we've talked about this. MLB marketing it's not on any level of what the NFL is doing.
What would Petco Park look like if Taylor Swift was there every day?
And what would her Swifties?
It would be insane.
Would be like,
they would sell out every game,
every pitch, and like dissecting every move into the dugout. Like,
what if she dated a player on a team that was bad? They would sell out every night. I mean, every night they would sell out just to basically see her in a suite.
They'd wear all the cute baseball gear. It's a thing, guys, and you see a lot of the people on social media also pointing out, like you said, Braden, their daughters are watching, their wives are watching, or whoever's watching that just is into Taylor Swift. And I also have to bring up the argument that, like, the shots of Jack Nicholson at Lakers games, who complained about that? Is it just complaining because she's a woman and you don't want to see a woman on the screen during an NFL game?
I was tired of looking at Jack too.
But did you see the outrage that you see for Taylor Swift?
I see the outrage for a lot of different. So I think most diehard sports fans don't want to see the non-sports person shoved down their throats, right? I mean, because even after a while,
it's a little performative.
Even after a while with like Emma Stone, right? So, all right, yeah, we get it. She's a Padres fan, right? It's just like, oh, here's Emma Stone again, and
she's wonderful though.
And the other thing too, it's like, I think this is a little bit different just because she's dating one of the players, but.
True.
The most annoying thing, I think, for a lot of sports fans is when celebrities show up for playoff games and you go, I didn't realize this guy was all of a sudden some Padres fan, right? I remember watching games, like you watching the New York Mets in a playoff game. And I think it was around the time I was in college because they went to the World Series against the Royals when I was in college. And you're seeing Jerry Seinfeld, and you're seeing all of these celebrities come out, and you're like, they're not Mets fans. And then I was sitting there going like, I wonder who the Padres celebrity fans would be when they should, because there was going to be a bunch that come out of the woodwork if they make it to a World Series, because the celebrities like going to World Series games. It's the same with the Dodgers. Like when you see the Los Angeles Dodgers play in the regular season, there's a couple, not really. Playoffs happen, and there are celebrities all over the place. And I think the worst for me on that, and I think it annoys a lot of sports fans, the Chicago Cubs celebrity cult following, like it's kind of like hip and cool to root for the Cubs. I think that one was kind of ridiculous in 2016, where you had all of these celebrities and other pro athletes, and everybody's repping the Cubs for no reason. I mean, Eddie Vedder's wearing a Cubs hat at the Cubs game, and he's the big San Diego Seattle Mariners, rivalry, the Vedder Cup, and the guys repping the Cubs. So I think a lot of fans in particular don't like to see kind of that bandwagon culture when it comes to celebrities and TV networks going, look at Emma Stone, this diehard Padres fan, and all the Padres fans that have seen it for so long are like, all right, come on. Emma Stone's not like super diehard Padres fan. I'm just using it as an example. I know her situation's a little bit different, but still, I mean, there's some truth to, I think, TV companies just shoving down celebrities on them all the time, but they have to do a job, and they got to get people to watch.
Yeah, this is the way of our world. This is how it's going, and this is what is going to drive a lot of the money. I mean, $330 million. I guarantee you, they're going to shove a lot of shots down your throats. And you know what? You're probably going to miss most of them because she's going to be on screen for like 3 seconds, and you're going to be going to the bathroom during that time, because instead of them showing a generic crowd shot or an establishing shot of Las Vegas, they're going to show her. And it's not going to be that bad. I promise you, it's not going to be that bad. And so I think that there's a lot of outrage. I think if you look at the numbers, you can understand what she's doing for the league, and you don't have to like it. I completely get that. You don't have to like it, but it's really a lot less than you might think in terms of how they're showing her and how they're using her, and even how she's putting stuff up. I mean, I'm sure she knows the cameras are there when she is hugging on Travis or doing things like that. I mean, some of it is obviously performative, and she's probably enjoying some of that, but for the most part, she's really not. I mean, she's not doing a whole lot that is taking away from the game.
The one that's where it gets too much is any Chiefs big play they show Taylor, or it's like if it's a big Kelsey play, I want to see Taylor, right? I want to see but that's like any family, right? I mean, you see any of the family members in the game, you want to see their reaction when their member of the team does something, right? You want to see the reaction. But like, if Mahomes finds Kadarius Toney down the sideline for a big touchdown, do I really care what Taylor Swift has to say? Like, right? So like those shots don't make any sense to me. I think some NFL fans can agree with that, but anything that involves Travis Kelce, give me the reaction of Taylor Swift, Kelsey's brother, and Kelsey's mom. I want to see what they're doing.
When you have Jason Kelce jumping out of a suite in Buffalo and, drinking out of the beer, the bowling ball beer thing and everything like that. Like Jason Kelce is just as entertaining as any of them. And so
he was really embracing the Bills culture. The other one I want to see, you're not going to see this, but Travis a couple of times got in some scuffles with the Ravens. I don't know what, a lot of Ravens fans are upset about the whole, Zay Flowers got in trouble for the taunting, but Kelce didn't. Kelce was mostly answering. And I'm not a huge Travis Kelce fan in general, but when Kelce gets into a scuffle, I want to see Taylor Swift's reaction. I want to see what she's saying about the scuffles, the bads, the goods and the bads. I mean, if we're going to show all the goods, I gotta see some bad Taylor Swift reactions too. Is she up there like saying like, give him the chair? Or is she up there like freaking out? I mean, I got to see the reactions on Taylor Swift all the time.
Any strong opinions, Adam? Do you feel one way or another?
It doesn't bother me. I don't see the outrage one of the other. She's in the stands. Who cares? She's like, I'm watching the football game. They panned her for a second and they go back to the football game. Who cares? I was going to say something though, Andy, because you talked about her not performing in the halftime Super Bowls in the past.
There you go.
she's been a Coca-Cola endorser for a long time, and
okay.
Pepsi was the sponsor for the Super Bowl halftime show for years. But Apple Music just took over. I believe this is the first year. So while she's not performing this year, now that Pepsi isn't there, it kind of opens the door for her to perform in the future.
See, Adam bringing some nuggets here that we did not know. I did not know. And so, yeah, there you go. And if she builds on this relationship, yeah, it's probably going to level out. I mean, look how much. If she builds on this relationship with the NFL, I think it's going to lose a lot of its luster. Part of it is that you just like that you're just watching the fact that she's with Travis Kelce. Once you sort of partner with them or do things like that, it takes on a whole different kind of relationship. So we'll see where it goes. But I did think it was fun to kind of look at the outrage a little bit and kind of break down what the numbers actually were. So that'll conclude most of our Taylor Swift talk today, unless we find some ways to insert her down the road. But like Braden said earlier, we're going to talk more NFL, more Padres, a lot of good stuff planned on this show. So keep it here. We'll catch you back when we return.
You can listen to San Diego's #1 sports station on the go with the free Audacy app. It's got all the sports, music, and podcasts you crave. Download the free Audacy app today.
I'm Chelsea Messenger, helping you beat the books with BetQL. Toronto and Chicago face off in NBA action this evening with the Bulls hosting the Raptors. Toronto has been trending to the under lately with 6 of their last 7 games falling short of the total. The Bulls haven't been quite as consistent to the under, but Chicago games have still gone under in 4 of their last 6. With those trends, tonight's BetQL 5-star best bet is to take the under between Chicago and Toronto. Bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL and download the BetMGM app today.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Cover California is a free service from the state that's already helped millions of people like you get and pay for health insurance. With financial help to lower the cost of health coverage, you could get a quality health plan for less than $10 a month. Every plan covers preventive care, doctor visits, emergency care, and more. If you have questions, we're here to help every step of the way. Cover California, this way to health insurance. Enroll by January 31st at coveredca.com.
At the Golf Mart by Worldwide Golf, there's something that binds us all. The collective goal to transcend the ordinary. Introducing the new Callaway AI Smoke Driver. The new AI Design Club has multiple sweet spots across the face, making it an average of 7 yards longer than the prior model. Visit us in store for a free custom fitting at the Golf Mart or shop us online at worldwidegolf.com. Get there.
Start the year fresh with environmental tips from the Port of San Diego. Let's take a moment for everyday items like cleaners, fertilizers, or batteries. Did you know that these common household items are considered hazardous? If you see words like danger, warning, or caution on the label, don't throw them away in your regular trash can. Find a collection center or disposal location near you so the hazardous waste doesn't end up in the San Diego Bay. Visit portofsandiego.org/that'smybay for more helpful tips.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now, and the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is your 2-minute warning. We'll be right back from break in 2 minutes on 97.3 The Fan.
The San Diego Home Improvement Expo, February 3rd and 4th, with hands-on demos, consult with top experts, hundreds of home improvement products, plant sales, everything for your home inside and out. February 3rd and 4th, Del Mar Fairgrounds. Admission is free.
Paid for by government.com.
Did you hear? A recent stash of $10 gold Liberty coins from the 1800s has been found. These gorgeous gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck in the late 1800s, and less than 50 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling this gold find an incredible opportunity. Call 1-800-473-3993. And you are guaranteed a $10 gold Liberty coin minted by the U.S. Mint in the 1800s. But with extremely limited availability, you must call now. These gold Liberty coins from the 1800s are still in uncirculated condition. That is history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-473-3993. Call now and you'll receive a free American Coin Collector's Bonus Package, a $40 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-473-3993 now to secure your $10 gold Liberty coins dated from the 1800s before they sell out. That's 1-800-473-3993.
From the team that brought you Amy Poehler's Say More with Dr. Sheila comes the comedy podcast, The Chris Chapman Do-Over, starring Ike Barinholtz as controversial shock jock Chris Chapman, who returns to the airwaves after being canceled.
This is your boy, Chris Chapman. My old show was a victim of a little thing called cancel culture, and I vowed to take a long break and really reflect. But I'm here to announce I'm back. Better than ever.
The improvised Chris Chapman Do-Over is an Audacy and Paper Kite production starring Ike Barinholtz as Chris Chapman. Listen on the free Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sunny and breezy with highs near 72.
Weather brought to you by Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest makes it easy to stick to your goals with food delivered right to your door. Visit daily-harvest.com and use code HARVEST for up to $65 off your first box.
Welcome back to Annie and Elsten. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm Annie Halbrin. Craig Elsten out today, but joined by Braden Suprennan and Adam Klug. We're having some fun for these few hours. Guys, it's a beautiful day outside. I thought that the Super Bowl is this weekend. It's obviously not. It's February 11th. I was looking at the teams over the weekend, and I was thinking, it's a really good matchup. I mean, if you look at it, right, 49ers, Chiefs, two really good teams. I feel like we're looking at something that has the potential to at least be a good game. Not a clunker of a game. You're not watching the Super Bowl just for the commercials. You're going to see two good quarterbacks. I know one has the makings of a game manager. Everybody talks about that with Brock Purdy, but we saw a little bit more of him in this last game. And I kind of wanted to start with that this past weekend with what Brock Purdy looked like for the 49ers. He gets all this talk about being a game manager. But I thought that he did show in this past game, especially in the second half, that he has more in him. He was able to make some plays when he needed to. He was able to, look down the field. He was able to actually move his feet, do a little bit more than he normally does, not just use the weapons around him to make those plays, which he does have good weapons around him. But I thought that he was able to show a little bit more with what his skill set is. I'm not sure, and I think this is why it's going to be such a good Super Bowl. I'm not sure that he's on the level of Pat Mahomes, or that you could put him on that level with Pat Mahomes because of what we've seen him do already. But I do wonder, are you going to see two really good quarterbacks in this Super Bowl? Are you going to be able to see kind of the matchup that we've been looking at from the past, where it's not just a game manager on one side and a guy that in Pat Mahomes that has already shown the abilities and the skills that he has, but this is going to be a real test because you have those athletes that are able to use the weapons around them. They're able to be game managers. They get that label, but in the biggest moment of your career in a Super Bowl, all the lights are on you. All the attention is on you. Can you rise to that occasion when you know that Chiefs defense is going to come with a plan? They are going to have a good plan when they get into that Super Bowl. They've already shown that. Steve Spagnuolo and that defensive group, that defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, has done an excellent job. So, Braden, what do you think when you look at Brock Purdy? What do you think in terms of him matching up against this Chiefs defense? How do you think that he's going to look?
Well, I think he's a kind of a game manager. He's not a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, that's for sure. And I'm very critical about quarterbacks, but to me, I mean, what makes a quarterback is not his weapons around him. It's him being able to play at a high level, regardless of who is around him and who his personnel is. Yes, does he do a good job of, getting his players the ball? Yeah, I would say so. He does a good job of not turning the ball over. But the Niners aren't going to win this game because Brock Purdy is carrying the team. The Niners are going to win because they got a good front seven, they got guys in the trenches, and they have an enormous amount of weapons, including Deebo Samuel, who we've talked about before. Ross Tucker brought it up last week. We're having Ross on the show coming up in the next hour. He accounts for 2 points of the point spread. I mean, he is arguably the best player in the National Football League for what he can do. He will never win an MVP award because, media members do not understand the value of what he brings as a playmaker, as a guy that can run the ball, as somebody that's a pass catcher, as somebody that is fast and also thick and can break tackles. He is by far the best player in the National Football League offensively, and nobody has him. Nobody has a guy like Deebo Samuel, and that's a big X factor. And he was banged up last week. I mean, he was banged up going against the Lions. I mean, he was limited throughout the entire week. He practiced fully on Friday, got to see him in a little bit of a role, but he's the biggest X factor. And then when you take him away, then you got Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is a ball player. That guy runs hard, has grit, great speed, great pass catcher out of the backfield. Obviously, one of the best running backs in the National Football League. You got Brandon Ayuk, who's a number 2 receiver for San Francisco, but could be a number 1 for pretty much anybody in the league. George Kittle's a safety net tight end for Brock Purdy. He's got a good offensive line. He's got arguably one of the best tackles in the league. He's surrounded by a lot of great weapons. He's got a great defense. Now, to me, the biggest thing, everybody talks about the quarterbacks, but the reality is in this Super Bowl, it's going to come down to the 2 defenses. Kansas City's defense led by Steve Spagnuolo, who, by the way, is a phenomenal defensive coordinator.
He's great.
He is a phenomenal DC. He wasn't always the best head coach, and there's a lot of guys like that are really good DCs, really good offensive coordinators, but they're not good head coaches, and you've seen that. I mean, he's got head coaching experience, leading the defense, completely shut down Baltimore throughout the entire game. And if you look at the game that Kansas City had against Baltimore, it's not like Patrick Mahomes had this phenomenal game. I mean, they scored 17 points. They got shut out in the second half. I mean, they weren't scoring at will. And I think Patrick Mahomes is probably the best quarterback in the league right now. But I will say it's going to come down to the defense. I don't think the Niners can stop Kansas City as much as KC can stop San Francisco, because Spagnuolo is going to have a lot of tricks up his sleeve for Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy, it's like he's got his team to the Super Bowl. Well, he didn't carry his team to the Super Bowl. If Lamar Jackson was in the Super Bowl, he would have carried his team to the Super Bowl. Aside, his defense was good. I will give the Baltimore Ravens defense credit. They were good, but they don't have, Baltimore doesn't have too many weapons offensively. They had a beat up Mark Andrews. They got Zay Flowers, who made a bunch of mental mistakes. They got washed up Odell Beckham Jr. They don't have the weapons as the other 2 teams. So to me, it's the defenses. Can San Francisco stop 3 guys? That's it. There's 3 guys for Kansas City that they need to stop, not including Mahomes, which is his own thing. You got to stop Kelsey. You got to stop Pacheco, and you got to stop Rice. If the ball gets in the hands of anybody aside from those 3 names, they don't move the ball. They don't. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he gets like 1 yard a pop. Kadarius Toney complaining about his fake injury, and then they came out that it wasn't fake, yada, yada, yada. He is a circus. He can't catch. Valdez-Scantling has had a terrible year. Those are the 3 guys that San Francisco needs to stop. And with their secondary and their zone defense, Andy Reid, again, great offensive coordinator, great offensive mind. When you see Travis Kelce wide open, we had somebody in the chat yesterday go like, why didn't you double team him? When you got him wide open, that's coaching right there. That's getting the guys in space. That's creating different looks. That's pushing the top off, getting somebody underneath. That's great development by the coaching staff. So it's going to come down to whether or not San Francisco can slow down Patrick Mahomes, because Kansas City is going to give Brock Purdy a lot of problems.
Yeah, it was weird to see the Ravens do that with Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was able to make all the plays that he wanted to in that game, and it didn't seem like they were all that concerned with him, which was weird. So that looked like it was more game planning.
The thing is you can't double team people, because especially a tight end. Like if you double team a tight end, right? What happens is you can't cover everybody else. So you're going to have to do some zone. You're going to have somebody free. Now, if you double team a tight end and then you compensate everybody else in the secondary, right? Because you got to know where Rice is, you got to know where Pacheco is, you got to know where some of the other receivers are. So somebody's not completely wide open. Then your front seven, you have a gap unaccounted for, especially in a tight end set, because when you got a tight end, there's an extra gap you have to worry about. You don't have enough people to fill all the gaps at the line of scrimmage and cover everybody if you want to double team Kelsey. So if you double team Kelsey and you want to protect for the pass, what's Isaiah Pacheco doing? He's running through a hole that there's like, well, who's supposed to be there? Well, you're double teaming Kelsey. That's why it's like, you know, this argument from fans all the time. It's like, you got to double team that guy. And you can't just double team people without having other things not accounted for. And you can't account for everything, but you know, pick your poison.
Yeah,
you double team Kelsey.
Yeah.
You got to do with Isaiah Pacheco while you're outflanked. You do with Isaiah Pacheco and double team Kelsey. You know, maybe you roll the dice with, you know, a zone coverage over the top, and all of a sudden you see Rashid Rice in the middle wide open. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it aside from just going, we got to double team Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
And Taylor Swift leaning out the window and doing 10s for Pacheco.
That's right. How do you cover Taylor Swift? You got nobody covering her in the box.
There.
Yeah, that's right.
So, no, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm definitely not saying, no, Brock Purdy is not on the level of Patrick Mahomes. But I did wonder, as I looked at this game, obviously Pat Mahomes he's elite. The guy's elite. They're going to the Super Bowl for the 4th time in 5 years. This Chiefs team is showing who they are consistently. And Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes showing who they are consistently. And I just think that there's something to the big moments for this group that you just cannot count them out. They did not have a great regular season. There's going to be a lot of game planning, scheming. It's going to be a big part of this game. The defenses, as you know, we always hear defense wins championships. And I do agree with that. And I think that that's going to be a big deal in this game. And Pat Mahomes has not looked as good in certain games as we've seen him in the past. But he rises to the moment. That guy is able to do so much, and he is able to take in the big moment and excel in it. And so I don't think that they're unbeatable. I think that the 49ers have a great chance to win this game.
They're not unbeatable. This is the worst.
And the 49ers have great weapons.
This is the worst Kansas City Chiefs team they've had in the last 4 years.
But they're still good. Being that bad, they're
won,
still good.
You know, they beat the Ravens with experience. I mean, the
Yeah.
Ravens just did a bunch of bonehead plays throughout the entire game, and experience got the most of them.
Right.
I mean, the Chiefs have been there, done that before.
Right.
And as great as Patrick Mahomes is, he didn't have that great of a game against Baltimore. I mean, he did okay. He had a nice opening drive. He had a couple of throws that are dumb throws that he gets rewarded for.
Yeah.
I mean, across the throw he had to Kelsey was more of Kelsey making a great play than Patrick Mahomes being so elite.
Right.
And you've seen Mahomes a little bit, you know, regress not having Tyreek Hill, and you're going to see him regress when he doesn't have some of these players for some of those immaculate throws he makes, because they're not good throws. He gets the benefit of the doubt on some of them. And I'm not talking about the classic. I'm talking about him spinning, you know, like in a pretzel shape and just like shot putting it, and then one of his players catching the ball and you're like, oh wow, what a great play by Mahomes. But it's like he kind of got bailed out a couple of times in those situations. But you know, the thing is, and this is why I'm so critical about quarterbacks, because the media always thinks if you win a football game, oh my God, this is the best quarterback since Tom Brady. And then they lose a game, it's like he's washed up, he can't play. I mean, look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, who has an MVP type season, it's like, oh, this guy's the greatest thing we've ever seen. He can run, he can throw. He has a couple bad years, like, oh, he's washed. He can't do it. He can't win a playoff game. I mean, I'm just saying, Patrick Mahomes is always going to be Patrick Mahomes. If he starts to not have those throws, you know, later in his, like, a little bit, like, you'll watch, like, there's going to be a couple of those that end up getting picked. It's not because he got worse. It's because it's just some of the plays didn't work out in his favor in those sense. Again, we're not talking about like the Chiefs being this unbeatable team. Niners defense is good. They've kind of gotten exposed the last couple of weeks. Their biggest thing is their secondary is kind of a problem.
I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. Matt Scraby, sorry.
I got the Niners. I think the Niners do it. I think John Lynch and company finally get over the top, and this might be the last chance, because after this year, they got one more year of not paying Brock Purdy, and then they're going to have a decision to make.
Right. If you are a Chargers hater or rooter against her, which many people are, Can't blame you one bit. You're looking at this AFC at least, and I don't care who is your head coach. I don't care who is your GM, which I do think they made probably some good decisions there with who they hired. But this AFC is good. I mean, you're still needing to get past them. And of course, the Chargers have a good quarterback. They have what looks like a good head coaching hire, a good GM hire that they made today. But you're still competing. It's just like the NL West for the Padres. It's competition, guys. I mean, you got the Chiefs, you've got a lot of teams now that are really, really good and that look like they're going to be good for the future. And you can only do so much with a manager, a head coach, et cetera, et cetera. You need to have the players, you need to have the roster, you need to have the ability, especially in football. You really need the game planning, the cohesion. You need everything to be working, obviously, much more in sync. So I don't know. What do you think, Braden, in terms of that AFC in general?
I will tell you when we come back because we do got to take a break. I think good football talk, Annie, because people said I'm a hater of the Chiefs and then a hater of the Niners are the same thing, which means we're pretty much neutral.
Well, when Adam's giving me certain like hand motions, and I'm like, looking at Adam, like, what, Adam? What do you want? Do you want to
time to go to break?
Yeah, time to go to break. All right, more Annie and Elsten up next.
Picture this: it's Friday afternoon when a thought hits you. I can spend another weekend doing the same old whatever, or I can hop into my all-new Hyundai Santa Fe and hit the road. With available H-Track all-wheel drive and 3-row seating, my whole family can head deep into the wild. Conquer the weekend in the all-new Hyundai Santa Fe. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Hyundai, there's joy in every journey. 2024 Santa Fe, available early 2024.
The first time I tried to quit vaping, I told myself that it was like a mountain that I had to climb over. And once I got to the other side, it would be clear. But I couldn't make it over. What really got me to quit was my little sister. I saw her vaping. So I was back in the mountain, but this time she was up there with me. It's weird what you can do for others that you won't do for yourself.
Every attempt is part of your story to quit for good. Visit Kick It California today at kickitca.org.
Hey guys, it's Woodsy. Sick and tired of achy joints? You dread the idea of surgery? You got to call QC Kinetics today. Listen, the state of healthcare is always changing. The old ideas like steroids and surgery are no longer your only options. Regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics is transforming lives. Innovative, non-surgical, drug-free treatments that deliver lasting results. Knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain from arthritis or injury. Do not let this pain keep you from living your best life. Call QC Kinetics today. Their advanced state-of-the-art
All right. So thanks to our intrepid fan base out there who live near Petco Park, we get to see a lot of the developments of the new Gallagher Square, which is looking like it's really coming along. This is a big project that the Padres have undertaken over this offseason that they're really excited about. They're going to be adding new seating there. Gallagher Square is really essentially going to look entirely different, and we'll be able to see that when the season starts. But they've moved the Tony Gwynn statue, and the statue itself remains the same. I believe that it's going to be somewhat across or adjacent to the Trevor Hoffman statue, but they've kind of gotten it to where they want it to be. It's really hard to tell because the rest of the area isn't done. But it's going to be exciting to see this when we're finally able to be let in there and kind of see what they've done there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. Obviously, love the upgrades that the Padres have done with Petco Park. We've seen that now for the last couple, 20 years now of Petco Park going into this season. So they've done exactly what the Spanos family did not do with the stadium that they had, and that's keep it up and keep it one of the best stadiums in San Diego and in the United States and Major League Baseball. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I know that visit Petco Park and go, it's the greatest place I've ever been. It's the greatest stadium I've ever been. I know it's up there with PNC in Pittsburgh. That always seems to be the two, and San Francisco always gets some love too. But I think out of all the stadiums I've been to, you know, and I'm a fair guy. And if I go to a stadium that I think is cooler than ones that we got, I will mention it. But, you know, Petco Park is so great for so many different reasons. And a big reason for that is the Padres keeping it up. They're keeping it state of the art every chance they get. They make it the place to be. They add the food from San Diego and the local craft drinks and beers right in the heart of the gas lamp. I mean, there's so many things to talk about how great Petco Park is and a great place to watch a game. And they continue to do it by constantly having upgrades instead of waiting 30 years and then having to do it because the thing is about to fall apart and it's crumbling. So good for the Padres. I'm looking forward to seeing the upgrades. They've made little upgrades here and there to make the viewing experience the best they can. And no question that anything's different with the new Park in the Park and Gallagher Square and whatever it's called now.
Yeah, we'll be excited to kind of see what they put in there, what new restaurants, what new developments. I love the old one, so it's I know a lot of people did as well, but we'll see what the new one looks like, and I'm sure it'll be.
I like the old beach too, and then they did it with the pier's cool.
I liked all the trees there.
I've gotten to sit at the pier. I thought it was a cool place to take in a game, and you know, with everything that they've replaced that seemed to be iconic for a lot of people growing up when they built the stadium. And changing some of those things, it's kind of tough at the beginning, but then you look at it, it's like, wow, man, this is pretty cool too.
Yeah, and I see a comment in the chat that the Spanos didn't own the stadium, having to go through the city, but that's not entirely true. Yes, it is true they didn't own the stadium. However, they could have put money in at any time.
Doesn't the city own some of the Petco Park too? Right?
Yeah,
Isn't that like
does,
yeah, right.
right.
So
Yeah.
like you could renovate the stadium. I mean, that's not keeping you from doing so.
I remember Eric Grupner saying many years ago, and I'm sure that they still hold to this, that they have a plan in place at Petco where every 5 years, like they don't let anything get out of date within 5 years of regression, I guess you could say. So they're constantly looking at places around the ballpark to make sure that it's not 5 years old. If it's 5 years old or getting to that point, they're updating it. So that's kind of their plan, where they're making sure that there's no part of the stadium that gets to that point. And
Very
of course,
Disney-esque.
yeah, and I mean,
Right?
look, there's obviously money
Very
that
Disney-esque.
goes along with that, and wanting to profit like any team would, like any team would from their fan base and things like that. But yeah, they're looking at it from that angle.
Yeah, that's the best way to do business. It's the reason why
Right.
Disney's in like seems like they rule the world. They have those things. It's the Disney Nordstrom customer service experience. That that good companies abide by, and that's what the Padres are doing. They make it a place to be. They make it a place to be for Padres fans, for baseball fans, and then the non-baseball fans. To kind of wrap up what we were talking about in the first segment. I mean, they appeal to everybody and get all walks of life in there, and that's what the name of the game is. Eric Grupner is in charge of getting people into that building, and he has done a phenomenal job of doing that. because they were doing it even before the roster turned into a bunch of superstars.
Right. And there is the entertainment factor, of course, as well, that goes into all of this. And people listen, guys, I will say this for the stories that I've done for the Union Tribune. Not everyone that is there is a diehard baseball fan. Some of them are just
100%.
there to, and I know this from interviews that I've done, and I'm kind of like, oh, really? Like they of course they want the Padres to win, but they're just really out to have a fun night. They have the income to do that. They want to get out there and enjoy things. And that's not the bulk of your fan base probably, but there definitely are those fans that exist that just want to have a fun night out.
A lot of young people are like that. I mean, there's a lot of my friends that's just kind of the thing with baseball. It's hilarious to me is they keep trying to catch this young fan that they'll never get because it's just not the way
they're chasing the trends, Braden.
But it's just never going to work because it's
agree.
baseball. Like baseball is a sport that is mostly viewed by parents and their kids. And then when you get older and when kids play, when they play baseball and they go to game with their dads and their moms, they love baseball and then they play, then they get to college, right? They get to high school and college and they go and have a good time and be 20 something years old, right? And then they start their family of their own, and then they get back into baseball because they remember it when they were a kid, and then they bring it to their son, their daughter, and then it starts to cycle over again. That time in the 20s, like that's not a big target audience for any sport in terms of getting people to pay money because they don't have any money, right. And the money they do have, they're using to go to PB and the Gas Lamp and North Park and doing what young people are doing. But for the Padres, what have they done to get those people into the ballpark? Beer fest and cocktail fest and wine fest and parties in the park and different atmosphere things that you talked about that are just fun happening things to be at. And there's a baseball game going on behind. So the kids like me that watch sporting events during weddings are there for the game, but our friends that aren't, that just are there for a good time, they're there for a good time. And then being able to, have that at Petco Park. And what the Padres have done in including that audience and that demographic by not just pushing their athletes and their product on the field is what separates them from a lot of different teams in baseball that are constantly looking for more attendance.
Well, it was just a few years ago that Padres fans were very excited, whether they were diehards or not, because their favorite player, Fernando Tatis Jr., was on the cover of MLB The Show. And this year's cover was just announced, Vladimir Guerrero. So Vladdy is on the cover. He also kind of doing a finger to his mouth, like, quieting the fans or quieting the haters or quieting the doubters or whatever you want to call it. You can interpret art however you'd like. But he is the new 2024 MLB The Show cover star. And, I don't know that it has a curse that everyone thinks it does.
I don't think it's like the Madden curse. I mean, it was cool and Fernando was on it. I already try to play. I love the MLB The Show. I think it's a cool game, but I had to make sure I got the hard copy of the one with Fernando on it because it's very rare that we get San Diego athletes on video games. So I don't know when the next Padres athlete will be on a video game. It was cool that Fernando was on it, but it was only a matter of time before Vlad Jr. was going to be the cover of MLB The Show. So big news to some, maybe not to others, but it is a good story in baseball.
Yeah, definitely deserving. All right. When we come back, I know we're going to talk a lot more about Padres. We've got some Grisham talk as well that is not just looking back at the past, is also kind of looking at the way that the roster is shaped right now for the Padres and a little bit about what they've done there for not just the outfield and the position players, but also the pitching. So we'll take a look at all that when we return right here on Annie and Elsten.
No, you can't. Like that's why he failed in New England because he can't do everything. You can't do it all.
The good times start now. Here are your hosts, Annie and Elsten, on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Second hour of Annie and Elsten here on a Tuesday. This hour of Annie and Elsten brought to you by the Farmer's Dog. All right, we got into this a little bit yesterday, but we never really wrapped totally around it. And it was a little bit of talk about Trent Grisham, who was traded in the Juan Soto move to the Yankees. Understandably, all right, very understandably, many fans probably approved of this move. All right, Trent Grisham, his production left a lot to be desired, a lot of strikeouts for Grisham, long slumps, but still there would be some danger in his bat. That's what was the most frustrating thing about Trent Grisham. He would have these long slumps. He would have these bouts of really hardly any production or a lot of strikeouts. And then he would go deep and you would be like, where is that? And he would go deep a few times and you'd be like, okay, he's coming back. It's going to be more consistent. And then it would kind of slump off again. And honestly, in talking to managers and coaches around the Padres, they really believed in this guy. I mean, it wasn't just lip service when you talk to them on the side, away from scrums, away from the cameras. They really believed that Trent Grisham could get it back. And what I'm saying is for good reason. Like that, again, is one of the most frustrating things. He had it in him. It just wasn't able to be harnessed in a way that was consistent. But he was a lefty and an outfielder and a Gold Glove outfielder and a very good Gold Glove outfielder at that. So you trade him to the Yankees, right? And again, over the last 2 years for the Padres, really one of the worst hitters for the Padres on their team. Mets wild card series aside, which was a great moment for Trent Grisham and for fans. What obviously a big thing for him. But it seemed like a good idea, right? It seemed like a good idea to trade Trent Grisham. He just really wasn't getting it done at any point in this lineup. But hindsight always being the luxury that it is, they traded him pretty early into the offseason, or at least for the way that this offseason is going with so much of a cold stove more than a hot stove. And you kind of look back and you think to yourself, would you rather have Grisham for $5.5 million to address the hole that they have now? Because the Padres just don't have the outfielders they just don't have hardly any outfielders. They have Fernando Tatis Jr., they've got, some options that you're not sure if they're going to be starters or not. Jose Azocar, you're thinking that Jurickson Profar is going to come back somewhere. But again, is Jurickson, you're looking at him right now. If they sign him, he's probably a starter, right? He's probably not going to be a guy that's coming off the bench because they just don't have anyone else. So you figure AJ Preller's got a plan that we don't know about and that he's working on something behind the scenes to obviously put some outfielders onto this roster. But you kind of look at this Trent Grisham trade and you think to yourself, right, Braden, like, did they sell low? First of all, could you have gotten more for Trent Grisham? Because Jock Peterson, too, a different type of player there, but he did just sign with the Diamondbacks for $9.5 million. So that's pretty expensive. And that's kind of the going rate that we're seeing, $5 million more than what players have gone for in the past. But the leftover options, if you will, for outfielder lefties, not that great, just not that awesome. So you're looking at a trade if you can pull one off. And I don't know exactly who'd be giving up a significant lefty in their lineup at this point, but maybe. Or you're looking at probably trying to find some lightning in a bottle somewhere, which AJ Preller has done in the past. But there's just not that many options. What do you think, Braden, in terms of the choice to not only move Trent Grisham, but again, hindsight is such a luxury. The front office for the Padres does not have the luxury of hindsight, and they did what they felt was best at the time. And I don't think anybody blamed them for the moves that they made to the Yankees. But we're playing in luxury land here, where you get to look back and go, was that the best move?
Yeah, they don't have a DeLorean parked outside the Petco Park where they could go into the future and see what every result is going to be before they make certain trades. No, I don't think I don't think it's a regret of trading Trent Grisham. I think they should have traded it. They should have got rid of him the year before, after the playoff stretch that he had. But he had that great playoff stretch, and so now everybody was like, "Look, Trent Grisham's back for a small sample size of basically just one series against the Mets where he played pretty well." He is a Gold Glove center fielder, and I think I saw one of the comments that there is a great player inside Trent Grisham. That is a great comment. He's got a ton of potential. But we've said that for now year after year after year, and eventually he's going to have to actually show it. Otherwise, you have to move on, and the Padres decided to move on, and I think that's a good move for the San Diego Padres. I mean, there's only so many times you can sit up there and watch Trent Grisham be late on a pitch because he's not getting his front foot down in time, or he's striking out after running the count 3-2. I mean, he had a great presence for the batter's box and the strike zone, but he never had any results with it. I mean, he'd run the count full, he'd foul off pitches, he'd see like 6 or 7 pitches in at bat, which is good. That's a quality at bat in the statistics world, and then it would result in a strikeout or a pop-up or something that was so irrelevant that could not help the team. I mean, if you want to keep him, I mean, keep rolling out the same team over and over again, you had to make some type of change. And my question is, in devil's advocate playing here, and I'm not saying, I don't think Jose Azocar is a solution in center field for the Padres at all. But my question is, what does Trent Grisham give you that Jose Azocar does not at this point? I mean, they're both good defenders, right? His biggest thing is being a defensive player. They don't need any extra defensive players. They need people that can score runs. They need some dudes that can go out there and hit. I mean, that was a big problem for the Padres last year. The bottom half of that lineup, just being able to hit their weight was something that they needed to do. So what does Trent Grisham bring you that Jose Azocar does not? Power, I guess, right? Power. But if he's never hitting the ball over the fence, does it really matter? I mean, if he doesn't hit the ball, does it matter the home runs that he has produced?
Yeah, and I think that that's a good question. And I understand where your point is on that, because that's kind of leading to, if you've got other options on the market that don't seem like they're that much better than Trent Grisham, you're going back to that question of, should you just have kept Trent Grisham? Because there's just really not a whole lot. You're not going to upgrade necessarily.
For $5 million?
For $5 million. But that goes back to your point of, well, you do have a Zokar, and you could maybe also.
He's a cheaper version of Trent Grisham.
And maybe also
power.
There is something about having a fresh start. Maybe you do infuse someone new into the lineup. And
I think he's a good ad for the Yankees for what he is, right? It's a short portion, right? He's great for a left-handed hitter. He's got to run into one a couple of times in New York. They needed a center fielder with some speed. He's a good gold glove center fielder. And the other thing with Trent, with the Yankees, they don't need him to be a big power guy. I wouldn't say the Padres really need him to do that either, but they're not paying him to hit over there. They're paying him to roam center field and every once in a while put one in the short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium. I think he's going to have a good year with the Yankees, but I don't necessarily know that is equivalent to would he have had the same year with the Padres in 2024, because we've seen what he's got.
The one thing that Azokar is not is a lefty. So he's got the righty bat, right? So you again, but I see now I can go back in circles in here though too, because as Braden's saying, if you're just going to have a lefty that's going to go out there and mostly strike out, what does it really matter all that much?
What does it matter?
I mean, I guess you have the threat, but
he's gonna see 7 pitches before he strikes out looking. I mean, who cares? I mean, I don't care how much power if he never hits the ball, right? So I think it's very interesting. The other thing we're talking with people in baseball is a lot of conversations right now are about this free agent class isn't very sexy, aside from Ohtani, right? I mean, Ohtani was the big guy, but next year's free agent class is a lot bigger. And there's a lot of teams right now that aren't making a lot of moves because they're like, what's the point? We might as well do what the Dodgers did last year and just save some money and then go after it the following year. So let's think about this from a Padres perspective, right? What do they want to do right now? What is their main goal into 2024 that involves the payroll?
Lowering the payroll.
Right. And being under what?
Under the CBT,
right? They want to be under the CBT. And we've talked about it before. I mean, if you go a little bit over, right, to try to compete for 2024, you can. And I actually have not been opposed to doing that.
But they'll have to pay the penalty.
But you're going to have to pay another tax, and then it's even more because it's multiple years in a row.
Right.
right? And
They're
that's more
resetting.
money that you're spending not on your team. So if you are the Padres and you eventually want to get under the CBT, because it wasn't necessarily like it had to be done this year. They have to do it this year. They just want to be under that. If you had to pick a year to do it with the offseason and with the free agent class that's out there, this is the year to do it, right? This is the year to do that. So now, they're not signing Jock Peterson. I'm sure they would love to have him, but they probably don't want to get closer to that luxury tax threshold. And the other thing is, I'm sure here's the last thing that you would want. The last thing you need as a Padres fan, or the Padres in general, is to not spend during the offseason, have a good year, buy at the deadline, and then get over the tax. Right. And then all of a sudden you're back over the tax, which you were trying to avoid to begin with. So based on some conversations we've had with people that we know, it sounds like the Padres are going to reset the CPT.
Right.
This is the year to do it. I wasn't a believer in that. I think you got to keep the window open. You got to go for it. But to be honest with you, the more I look at it, even though they don't have a full roster, with the stars that they have,
They're still going for it.
Is that good enough to beat the Reds? I'd say it's good enough to beat the Reds.
Yeah.
Is that good enough to beat the Giants right now? I think it's probably good enough to beat the Giants. I mean, think about the teams that you're competing with in expanded playoff. Are you going to be better than the Marlins? You're probably going to be better than the Marlins with your 4 studs, your 3 studs, with some good starting pitching. Is it a complete team that can win a World Series? Probably not. It's not a more complete team than it was last year. But you have enough pieces where you can roll those guys out day in and day out. And more times than not, they're going to beat the mediocre teams in Major League Baseball, which means you're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, which means you could make a deal at the deadline for somebody that might be controllable, might be under the CBD, might be a guy that is somebody that is affordable to help this team get a boost to make it run the playoffs. Because at the end of the day, all you got to do is get into the dance. You don't have to have this great regular season. Just get in. And at that point, anything's possible. We've seen it with the Diamondbacks, saw it with the Rangers last year, saw it with the Padres 2 years ago. Just get in, give yourself a chance.
This team, as currently constructed, and if you were to take the roster spots that are still open, and let's go kind of league minimum on that, right? Like, so you're going to fill in with some Michael Wacha types, some Seth Lugo types that you hope that you find, perhaps some of the trade that came over from the Yankees. You're looking at fighting for rotation spots. AJ Cassavell wrote about that. So let's say that you're filling in on those roster spots with no big names. You're not spending, you're not going out there and you're not getting a marquee player, but you're filling in with guys that you're hoping that you catch lightning in a bottle for a few of them. If a few of them can work out, you're going to be able to make up the rest of them, so long as the guys that are supposed to perform to a certain level revert back to their level. If you have good performances and good seasons from Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Michael King, get a 4th one in there that is solid, maybe not a star, but solid, and you make up the 5th and maybe even a 6th spot, you're able to manipulate that with the bullpen and the arms that you have available. If you're able to get the top of your lineup to perform the way that they're supposed to, you're still missing lefties in the lineup. I think that is going to be an issue, but maybe they're, again, able to find someone that's able to be solid, that's able to give them at least something a little bit above average, right? And you can get some depth in the bottom of your lineup too. You also need some good bench pieces. I'm not saying that you don't need, you do, but you still get to look around and say, I have Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Michael King, if he pans out the way that they hope, Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts. I can go on and on. You still have good players is what I'm saying. So that's
Jake can have a good year.
Jake could have a good year.
I think Bogaerts is going to be better in his second year. We've seen that so many times in baseball. First year, always a little bit of a struggle. And he wasn't even that bad last year either. And you add all those pieces. But what I do want to say is, like, as much as right now, again, it's short term. We're looking at the tree instead of the forest, right? It's panic time. Got to make a trade. Got to go sign somebody. I'm not a believer in just signing somebody just to sign somebody, because, again, let's think about it from the CBT standard, right? I mean, you could go and sign Cody Bellinger just to say you needed the left-handed bat, is a big star, yada, yada, yada. But then to me, you'd be making another Xander Bogaerts move, which we've already talked about is not something the Padres want to do again.
Well, I'm not saying you do that if
I'm not saying you're
yeah.
saying you're doing that.
Okay.
I'm just saying in general. But the other thing I want to say, like I was leading to, is I would not, based on some conversations I've had with some people that make some important decisions with the Padres, I would not treat this year as a trending year of not spending money in the future, because it sounds like just because Peter Seidler is no longer with us, his family is going to run the team just like Peter would have run the team. That's the conversations I've had with some people about this organization, and everybody has said, look, this year, CBT. We don't want to get penalized anymore. The fines start getting bigger and bigger and bigger with every year that you do it. You lose the draft picks. We got to reset. You look at the free agent market. It's not that impressive. It's not worth spending $10 million on Jock Peterson, right? It's not worth that. So if you want to reset the CBT, don't sign anybody big. You got enough personnel to make you competitive in 2024 and then get after again in 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres go back to what they were in 2025. And I think a lot of people see the TV contract and some of the moves they've made behind the scenes and all of these things that just infuse panic. And Padres fans, you know this, Andy. We both grew up in this town. I mean, think about those Padres teams in the mid-2000s where they're not spending money. The biggest free agent pickup was Seth Smith, and it was like, this is going to be the savior of the franchise. And everybody, no Padre fan wants to go back to that. I'm just saying, I don't think that is going to be the case just because 2024 may seem like they are cutting money.
I don't know that that's going to be the case, that they're going to sink to the low payroll that they had in the past. I take a more conservative approach on that based on conversations. And of course, as Braden knows too, it's sometimes it's about the conversations you're having and the timing that you're having them and what's changing. I don't think that they're going to go back to the money that they spent under Peter, but I think that they might find a medium that's a little bit more palatable, I guess you might say, but I don't know. I mean, some of this might depend on, look, MLB stepped in. You know, it might depend on where MLB sees this team up against, what kind of money, what kind of debt, what they're looking at, and how much influence they get to exert at any certain time. They are going to be dealing with this for the next few years. But in general, Braden, I get where you're coming from, which is you're not necessarily punting this year. You're still going out, you're competing. But if the free agent, if the class isn't there that you want, if the players aren't necessarily that you want or that you can spend money for, you might be looking at next year and saying, we're hoping for the best for this year. Maybe we get some magic. Maybe we catch some lightning in the bottle. We get into the playoffs. We move through the wild card. But you're also looking at the prospects that you have coming up next year, and you're looking at the free agent class for next year. What I will say about Padres fans is they were eating hamburger back in those Seth Smith days. They have gotten a taste of steak. It is very difficult to go back to the hamburger when you have eaten the steak. More Annie and Elsten when we return. Keep it right here, guys.
Braden, I need your
All right. Dennis Lynn of The Athletic put out a fan survey, and we addressed it on the show just a week ago. I think we were going through the fan survey and talking about our thoughts on the questions, and the results are in. So we're going to go through this a little bit and take a look at the fans' thoughts, right? I mean, really what matters is what you guys are thinking out there in terms of going forward into the season, because look, there just isn't that much going on, guys. I mean, I've never witnessed, I can't remember an offseason that's been quite like this, where there is literally crickets from the Padres front office. There just haven't been that many moves.
Especially in the Seidler-Preller era of San Diego Padres baseball.
We haven't been used to this for quite a while. It's really an odd thing, but you got to think that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about, right? So it's an odd time. We appreciate you being with us. We also can't wait for spring training to start and games to happen. And we're going to come in here probably bouncing off the walls most days, wanting to talk about what's gone on in the last game or in the previous game and what's happening in spring training or what a certain player said. And I know I'm excited to be down at Petco Park talking to these guys as well and bringing you those thoughts. So there's going to be a lot to look forward to. Craig Elsten will also be back. I failed to mention he is feeling ill, so he's under the weather. He's taken the day off, but he's done yeoman's work on this show, keeping it going, especially while I've been gone for Salute to Champions. So we hope that he's feeling better. He'll definitely be back. And there's just a lot to look forward to in the future, guys. But right now, it is a quiet time in Padres land. And we're going to maintain to continue to talk about them because it is the important team in town and important flagship, obviously, of the station. But, you know, we what can we say, Braden, sometimes except for, hey, they might do this or they might do that, or this is what they could do. And this is what we're looking forward to them doing.
And a lot of obviously uncertainty with some things that were always in place with the Padres that are not in place anymore. Obviously, with the passing of Peter Seidler, it's a different, who's in charge and everything going on with the Padres and the no TV contract. A lot of uncertainty with the team.
Yes.
Whereas in years past, it was like you knew they were going to be on TV. You knew Peter Seidler was going to be there. You knew the direction of the team. AJ Preller was going to wheel and deal and get some big time names in here. It's just a little bit different of an offseason than we're used to. And I think that changes the confidence level of a lot of Padres fans. We talked about that, but based on the results, I think it's very interesting. And I want to compare these two at the same time. The majority of Padres fans, at only 38%, were unsure about their confidence about the Padres heading in the right direction. Yeah. And I think that's very fair. I went with not very confident. I think the majority range, was kind of around confident, unsure, not very confident, but it seems like unsure seems to be the main direction. With all that uncertainty, I totally understand why fans are unsure about the direction of the Padres. And then you look at it and compare it to last year. I think it's very difficult for this to be anything aside from less confidence than last year, because last year, coming off beating the Dodgers in the NLCS, you got everybody coming back, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Fernando Tatis Jr., the top four. You had a good pitching staff. You added some pieces. It was World Series or bust. I mean, FanFest was through the roof. I mean, that was the most confident I ever been for the Padres, and it's such a disappointing season. Not surprised that most Padres fans today are a little less confident, 42%, or a lot less confident at 42% than they were a year ago from this time. Not really surprising results.
Yeah, no, it's not at all. There is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions that still need to be answered going into spring training and then going into the season. So there's just no real reason to kind of think that you have a certain direction when you just don't know what the direction is yet. That's kind of where fans are at. I mean, they're still waiting to see.
The other confidence level that I'd like to discuss is the confidence in President of Baseball Operations, AJ Preller, because remember when he was making all those moves at the beginning and he was knocking the hamburger off of Padres fans' plates and slapping an ice fillet down. the T-shirt that was all around is "In Preller We Trust," and everybody was all about AJ Preller, and the confidence level was high because he was bringing in big names and he was giving out contract extensions. And it started with Eric Hosmer and Will Myers, and it went to Manny Machado. I mean, the day they signed Manny Machado was unbelievable. Padres fans could never fathom signing a player like that here in San Diego. And they had Fernando and the Bogarts and everything that goes through. Has that confidence level changed? And the majority of Padres fans, although a slight majority, was unsure, not very confident, not confident at all, seemed to be the three highest. Not a lot of people still very confident in AJ Preller, but I will say it's a little bit more in favor of Preller than I would have thought after last season and after a lot of phone calls that we have gotten on the station and all three shows, especially with the way last season ended and the fact that he has been here a long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point you just want the results. You want to know that for the amount of time that he's been here, you're seeing, I guess, more trips or getting closer to the World Series. But you do have to point out two things here. And AJ Preller, I think he would even tell you that he's made a lot of mistakes. But number one, they were in a rebuilding window when he first came on, and they were very aware of that this was not the time yet in the first, part of his tenure that they were going to be going to the World Series. They are obviously in the window now. But the other thing that you don't know about with that is there was some influence from Peter Seidler on some of the decisions that were made regarding some of these contracts. And so no one's going to come out and say this, but in the back offices of the Padres, how much leash they're giving to certain things, how much weight certain decisions hold, that is something that only they know and that they're judging AJ Preller on. Okay, but Mike Shildt, and that was the next question. How would you rate the hiring of Mike Shildt? Looks like most people thought that was good or very good.
Yeah, not surprised.
Excellent.
I mean, I think, I gave it I think, what did I give? What were the options again? It was excellent, very good, fair, poor. I thought it was a very safe hire, so I think I ended up going with fair to good. I think most people like Mike Shildt.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people were really upset that they decided to hire Mike Shildt, especially after Bob Melvin left. Wasn't too many options out there. I know a lot of people wanted Benji Gill and Phil Nevin floated around, but I think the safest hire you could do with the least amount of turnover was getting a guy like Mike Shildt. And I think a lot of people are satisfied with that. And he had success with the St. Louis Cardinals organization. The big thing for me, though, is for a guy that ended up not being the Cardinals manager anymore because of disagreements with his president of baseball. How does that play out with another president of baseball that has now had 4 different managers at the helm of him being in charge? That was the biggest question for me. It seems like they're on the same page. We'll see how much of that plays out during the season. But as of right now, everything seems like it's good. Mike Shildt loves the new opportunity. And I think a lot of players like Mike Shildt. And that's the best part. At the end of the day, for managers in baseball, they have to relate to their ball club. And they got to get the most out of their ball club, and the players got to like them. And I think most players in this Padres organization like a guy like Mike Shildt.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a slight either on Bob Melvin. I think that they like Mike Shildt too. It's not really, they're willing to see what he's about. Is I guess what
there's guys that like every manager they play for. There's guys that don't like a single one. I mean, there's multiple. There's a lot of good managers in baseball that players can relate to, that players like playing for.
Yeah. And there are some that they just don't, they could give or take, guys. They just don't care. Some of these players just don't care.
How concerned are you about the Padres payroll cuts this offseason? Because I know we got to get to break in the next couple of minutes before we get to Ross Tucker. But I think that was another one to kind of coincide what we were talking about in the last segment, Annie. How concerned are you about the Padres payroll cuts this offseason? I said somewhat concerned. Did you say not? What was your answer before we give the fans one?
I either said somewhat or very. I'm pretty sure I probably said somewhat or very.
Right. And
I was on the upper level of that.
And the majority of people agree with our opinion on the matter. I do think it's somewhat concerning for the Padres, but I've kind of been talked off the ledge a little bit, and I don't want to just paint sunshine and rainbows, but I can kind of see the plan play out. I'm starting to see the forest a little bit more than just the panic tree in front of us. So I'm probably leaning more towards somewhat concerned, but I think a lot of that is, like we talked about before, the uncertainty of the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is how will the TV deal affect things? How will the money shake out? with Peter Seidler's passing. And these are just questions that we just don't know. And again, it is not our money. It is not the fans' money, but that question is being asked in terms of it's going to affect the payroll. And that is what you're looking at. All right. What should the Padres do with Hassan Kim, Braden?
I think most fans probably want to keep him or sign an extension, and that's exactly what they said. Negotiate a contract extension before he reaches free agency. 41% of people have said that. I said trade him for the season starts, and again, people get all upset with me, like, I can't believe you would do that. It's like you have to separate the player from the business in terms of your personal fandom and relationship. You can't fall in love with baseball players. You can't fall in love with athletes in general if you're making business decisions. Otherwise, you end up hanging on to a player you probably shouldn't because you really like the guy. And I think a lot of Padres fans obviously love Hassan Kim. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, and I'm not saying he's a player that needs to be out of here. But from a business side of things, I think you should trade him for the season starts. Most people want to see him get a contract extension.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised.
I don't know that there was a lot of surprises in this fan survey. How many games do you think the Padres will win in 2024? Most of the votes went to between 80 and 85, 42% between 80 and 85. You had 36.5% between 85 and 90. That was the majority of your votes. So I don't know that that's all that surprising.
Cautiously optimistic,
right,
is what the fans think right now. I kind of have to agree with that. I mean, that's kind of the range. If they win more than 85 games, I think it's a great year for the Padres as of right now.
And your excitement level for the 2024 Padres, that was also a question. Let's see. The biggest number was somewhat excited, 33.9%. I think a new baseball season is always exciting. I think that you're going to follow the storylines.
There's
matter
not
what,
a lot
the
of
good, the bad, the
right.
ugly.
There's not a lot
fun.
of people that were not very excited. It's exciting. Your favorite sports team's coming back. The roster is way better than it was back in the mid 2000s. Right. You have reasons to be excited about. Worst comes to worst, you get to see Fernando play every single day. You get to see Manny Machado make plays at third base. You get to see homegrown Joe Musgrove go out there and pitch for the San Diego Padres. I mean, born and raised, not necessarily from the Padres organization, but you know what I'm talking about. There are some players that are exciting to watch for the Padres. There's that excitement of maybe being able to see some of these young guys we keep talking about coming up the ranks. So always excited for Padres baseball. The start of spring, and when the Padres are playing at Petco Park. Summer's right around the corner. How can you not be excited for that?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, too, about this survey, describe your feelings on the state of the team and its future in a sentence or two. These were kind of, I thought, the more interesting things. A lot of the things that we've been talking about, worried about Peter Seidler's win at any cost mentality will disappear now under new leadership. There's also one that says all the contracts from the past years are going to hamstring this team for years going forward. This is an in-between year. Help is on the way with young players. So again, just as you would expect with many of these kinds of surveys, it runs the gamut. All right. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Ross Tucker, NFL Audacy insider. We'll be getting his thoughts on the last games this past weekend of the NFL and also the Super Bowl going forward. More Annie and Elsten on 97.3, The Fan. Welcome back to Annie and Elsten on 97.3 The Fan. We are in hour number 2. We talk some NFL, some Taylor Swift, some Super Bowl earlier in the show. And we are excited right now to bring in NFL insider for Audacy, Ross Tucker. Insider calls are brought to you by Old Spice. Men have skin too. Ross, we were perusing your Twitter, and thank you so much for being here. You're joined today by myself, Annie, as well as Braden Suprenant. We were perusing your Twitter, and we saw that you were on the sidelines for the Chiefs-Ravens game. This is correct, right?
That is correct. You're
Okay.
1 for 1
Okay.
so far, Annie.
All
Yeah.
right. So we had some flexes on that Twitter where you were waiting, it looked like, for Pat Mahomes. You had maybe just finished an interview with Andy Reid or Travis Kelce. I mean, the point is you were right among the superstars, doing your job, getting all the good interviews. But it sounds like you had some kind of interaction with Taylor Swift. And we got to lead with that. I mean, what happened, Ross?
It really is unbelievable, like, how many people want to talk about that. It's amazing. I told you before, Annie, that she's from my hometown, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's just like, it really is wild because I've been been on a lot of radio stations, and I guess it's just the nature of the beast, but it's really something else to be from a small town an hour west of Philadelphia called Wyomissing that graduates like 135 kids. And like, legitimately, I know where she lived from when she was like 3 years old till she was 15 years old. Like, I know her house. It's just wild how popular she is. I think I told you I pretty friendly with her dad and have been for a long time. I've seen Taylor in concert, I guess, 4 times, and I've talked to her twice. But the first time was 2007, and the second time was 2015. So it had been a while, but when she got out there, I'm able to be near the stage because I'm doing those interviews after the trophy presentation. So she's like 5 feet away from me. And I was like, gosh, I got to say something, so I couldn't think of what to do. And you can't get within 5 feet of her any closer than that because she's got the security people are wrapped around her, and she's with Kelsey's parents. So I figured it out, Annie. I thought, okay, I got it. So I pulled up on my phone the picture of my daughters with her dad at her concert in Philadelphia in May.
Ooh, nice move.
I said, and I'm tall and big, so I kind of put it where she could see it and said, Taylor. And she looked over and she looked at the picture and was like, she recognized her dad. And then she looked at me and I said, I'm Ross Tucker from Wyomissing. I'm pretty good friends with your dad. And she looks at me and she goes, oh yeah, no, I know you. I know you. And it was pretty cool. Big blown opportunity for me not to reply to her, I know you. I know you. No, it was pretty good. That's my third interaction. She's awesome, and the amount of people that she's bringing into sport right now is awesome. I mean, I've had 3 interactions with her, and they've all been phenomenal. She's very, very kind. She's very witty. The first time we ever met her, we were on her like tour bus. Her dad took us on there, and then I don't know what she was doing, but she came onto the bus. And I don't know, her dad was like, oh man, we got to go. Because it's probably not the best feeling to have people in your bedroom that you've never seen before in your life. So we were like, her dad's like, oh, we should go. And she saw my wife and she goes, you're so pretty. And this is 2007 when she's 18 or whatever. And then when we saw her again in 2015, we talked to her for a while, and she saw my wife and said, you are so pretty. And we both laughed and said, that's what you said the last time. And without any hesitation, she said, well, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. She's just, as you would imagine from the lyrics and stuff, she's just really, really, smart. And I understand, I really do. People that are like tired of the networks showing her, during games, especially after Kelsey does something positive. I guess I would tell you is like, number one, that's not really her fault, right? Like, she's there to support her boyfriend. I'm pretty confident she couldn't care at all if they showed her. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's also why I laughed when they first started dating, when people were like saying, is this just a publicity move for her? Guys, she doesn't need publicity. I mean, every concert's been sold out forever, and like, she's the most well-known person in the world. Like she doesn't need a few football fans to like her.
Agreed.
But I will say this, my daughters are even wanting to watch the games more, and there's certainly more people watching football now. I think that's been reflected in the ratings and when she's involved, and I think that's a huge positive. I mean, if you really love football, don't you want other people to experience it? I know I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. As a big time football fan and a high school football coach, I mean, we try to get as many numbers in football as possible to keep growing the game. And anything to bring more eyes to football, I'm all for. Ross, I do want to ask you about that game that you were able to be a part of for Westwood One in the AFC Championship game. Obviously, the Ravens hosting their first AFC Championship game. It was a big game for them, and kind of got punched in the mouth early by KC, but it was really Kansas City's defense looked exceptional as they've had all season with Steve Spagnuolo. How did you see that game play out in terms of a defensive look for Kansas City, and how big of an impact, as much as Mahomes and Kelsey and the offense really takes the front part of the Kansas City Chiefs stage, just how great has that Kansas City defense been, and how much of an asset is it for them going into the Super Bowl next week?
Right. So I think you would appreciate this as a coach, but I really thought that the Chiefs outcoached the Ravens.
Yeah.
And that was a
Agreed.
big factor, especially early, right? I'll credit the Ravens for some of the adjustments they made, but Andy Reid was ahead of Mike McDonald, the brilliant young D coordinator for the Ravens, on those first two drives. But even so, they still had to make some ridiculous plays, Mahomes to Kelsey, what else is new, to get those two touchdowns. And it just felt like those first two touchdown drives, it felt like the Ravens fans were stunned. I think the players were a little bit too. It was like they kind of got punched in the mouth. And I thought the defense adjusted, only gave up a field goal the rest of the way. But it was almost like the offense got out of character. And, only have 3 runs for Gus Edwards. I don't even know how many design quarterback runs they had. Felt like maybe 1 or 2. It's really disappointing, actually, because if you're a former offensive lineman like me, or if you're a Ravens player, I think you feel like you want to lose going down playing your game. And it's like the Chiefs took the Ravens out of their game. I thought that was really disappointing.
You're listening to Audacy NFL insider Ross Tucker here on 97.3 The Fan. Insider calls are brought to you by Old Spice Gentleman's Blend Body Wash, providing exfoliation plus 24/7 moisturization because men have skin too. Ross, you were talking about guys playing their own style of game, their own type of game. Can we just go back to the Lions game, the heat that Dan Campbell has been getting about those 4th down calls? What's your take and your outlook on that game and how the Lions played and the game calling as well? Do you think that all of that blame is warranted?
Well, I think that you can have a reasonable discussion on both of the decisions to go for on 4th down rather than kicking field goals. I'll give Dan a lot of credit because he's right. The 3rd down run at the end of the game, when they were down near the goal line, that's an inexcusable error. You cannot do that. You can't take the chance that you don't get in and you have to use a timeout, which is exactly what happened. You got to throw the ball on 3rd down. Got to throw it on 4th. I thought that was a huge mistake by the Lions. Because then you have to count on an onside kick, the probability of which is so low in the NFL these days. So the 2 4th downs, I had much more of a problem with the first one than the second one. I do wonder sometimes what goes into the models for these teams. There's no anyone acting like there's a right or wrong answer. I would be skeptical of those people. You have to understand what the model is that goes into it. Like, does it just say 4th and 2 at the 28, you should go for it? Or does it take into account that the kicker hasn't been great, that how much time's left? And the big one for me is that it's the difference between a 2-score game and a 3-score game. Because I just wonder, I don't think these models are always that advanced. And so it might say, hey, there's a lean here towards going for it, Dan. But then he's gotta be the one that says, yeah, but even if we get it, there's still a pretty good chance we're kicking a field goal. Whereas if we don't, the difference between being a 2-score game and 3-score game is huge. I thought that they should kick the field goal on the first one. The second one's a little bit more understandable to me because they had not been able to stop the Niners at that point. So even if they kicked the field goal and he made it and they tied it, it still felt like the Niners would just go down and score. The goal is not to tie the game. The goal is to win it. So I can live with the second one more than the first. Truthfully, I'm probably a little conservative and might have kicked both of them, but second one I was okay with. First one I really thought was a mistake.
Well, Ross, we're coming up onto our break here, but we appreciate your time. We're going to get to talk to you one more time, at least next week, as we prepare for the Super Bowl. We got a great Taylor Swift story out of you, so appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always great talking with you. Looking forward to next week.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Braden and Adam, it's been a wonderful 2 hours. Thanks for letting me man the fort here a bit. It is called Annie and Elsten, so I guess that's what I do. But it's been a great 2 hours. And Braden, you're going to go ahead and take over these next 2 hours. And I'm looking forward to what you're bringing as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We'll take you home to Gwen and Chris coming up in the next 2 hours. We'll get into some Aztec basketball, we'll talk more NFL, and I got a big question for a lot of people. Is it possible nowadays to be critical without being a hater?
Ooh, love
We'll get
it.
into that at 1 o'clock. So
All right.
that's that will be coming up on Braden filling in for Annie and Elsten. Annie, good working with you as always. We'll see you later in this week.
Yeah, more Annie and Elsten next with Braden and Adam.
97.3 The Fan.
Welcome into Annie and Elsten, hour 3 of the program. It is not Annie nor Elsten. It is Braden Surprenant filling in for the final 2 hours of the program. Got a lot of fun stuff to talk about here on the show. Again, big thanks to Annie for helping out today. She's very busy this time. She's doing a great job of planning the Salute to Champions dinner. And she's been all over the place in meetings and scheduling events and talking to people that are going to be there and getting the invite. I mean, so many things go into planning a major event like that she's been a part of for the last couple of years and done an excellent job in doing all of those things. And it takes up a lot of time. We knew about this, before the show started in a couple of weeks ago, and full support to Annie, and we want to help her out as much as possible. Craig, a little bit under the weather today. He started to sound a little under the weather yesterday, and got to make sure he's rested up, ready to go. So while Craig is getting better, and hopefully will be joining us later on in the week, and Annie out working and hustling and grinding for the best of the city of San Diego from a sports standpoint, I, Braden Surprenant, will be leading the way for the next 2 hours leading up to Gwen and Chris. Got a big Aztec basketball game tonight as they take on Colorado State up in Fort Collins. I'm going to talk about that later on, the 12:30 segment. So at 12:30, we'll break down the San Diego State Aztecs. Joe Lunardi put out his latest bracketology. I have been such a supporter of Lauren Artie for a long time. And this year, for some reason, he is disrespecting the Frogs. But that's a different topic for a different day. But I as of right now, San Diego State in a very good spot in a conference, the Mountain West Conference, that is going to have potentially more bids to the NCAA tournament than the ACC and the Pac-12 combined. I'm going to say that again. The Mountain West Conference might have more teams in the NCAA tournament than the ACC and the Pac-12 combined. If I were to tell you that 10 years ago, nobody would believe me, that San Diego State would be in a conference that would be getting more bids than conferences that had UCLA and Arizona and USC and Oregon, and conference with Duke, North Carolina, NC State, and the Tobacco Road Conference, basically the ACC. It's really remarkable. We'll get into that in a little bit. We talked a little bit of Padres in the first couple of hours. I have said for a long time this offseason, I have been concerned about the Padres moving forward. I really have. About maybe their financials, about way things are shaping up, some of the moves that have been made during this offseason. I've then since had some conversations with some people in the know, and I'm here to say it might be time to pump the brakes a little bit on the panic button because of what the free agent market is like, because of what the Padres need to do this season financially to be able to reset for future years, and because of that continuation of seeing Peter Seidler's vision through from his family. I'm just here to say, I don't think this year for the Padres, it might be a little setback in payroll. It might be, a little bit less sexy during the offseason. I don't think that's going to be the norm here in San Diego. As Annie put it earlier in the show, of us Padres fans eating hamburger and then AJ Preller and Peter Seidler slapping a steak, nice filet on our plate. I don't think they're going to pull a fast one and put the hamburger back on, as much as it may look like that right now. Another topic we'll get into. We've thrown out the idea. I mean, we talked about it with Dennis Lynn, his survey he had. And the big question, of course, with the Padres is whether or not you trade Hassan Kim at this point in time. And a lot of Padres fans don't want to do that. I mentioned that on the Braden Surprenant show over the weekend, a couple weekends ago, that I think it's the best business decision for the Padres to trade Hassan Kim before the season starts. And again, I haven't said I don't like Hassan Kim. I don't want Hassan Kim part of the team. It's not what I'm saying. Just from a business standpoint, he is the last luxury that you cannot afford. He is the last thing that is not tied down to the ship. based on his contract. If you really want to reset the CBT, it's the last way you could possibly do that. Because, again, he's probably not going to be somebody you can afford at the end of the season. Or maybe you reset the CBT. You don't go after some of these players that are getting $10 million, some of these veterans that we have thrown out there to maybe take a chance on, which a lot of them are now starting to fly off the board. And maybe that resetting of the CBT is the reason to bring back Hassan Kim. Maybe they need to do that in order to give Hassan Kim a contract extension. Would you be willing to punt on the season, even though I don't think you're punting when you have those superstars? Would you be willing to punt on 2024 if it meant Hassan Kim re-signs with the Padres in the offseason going into 2025 and years on? That's a question we haven't talked about, especially for a lot of people that love Hassan. He's a fan favorite. He's a good ball player for the Padres. He's one of their better players. Would you be willing to punt on 2024 if it meant Hassan Kim was going to be on the team 2025 and beyond? I think a lot of Padres fans would probably say that. I would take my chances with this team that they have currently assembled and sign Hassan Kim during the offseason if you really want Hassan Kim back. We did get some feedback on that on the stream with a lot of the chats. We did have some of the people call in. We do have one phone call, and we're going to get to her right now. Christy in San Diego wants to weigh in on the Hassan Kim topic. Christy, what's going on? You're on with Annie and Elsten with Braden Soprenin.
Hello. I just want to keep Hassan Kim because I just love him, and I think he's good for our team, and I think he's only going to be better for our team.
Even if the business decision is better to trade Hassan Kim, you're saying doesn't matter. He needs to be a part of the Pods.
Correct. I think he is our business, and we need to keep him in the game on our team.
All right, that's a good opinion. Well, we're open to all opinions here, Christy. I appreciate the phone call. You're getting some love in the YouTube chat. How about this question? Since we're playing hypotheticals, what if signing Hassan Kim guarantees the Padres won't win a World Series while he's a member of the Padres? You still want Hassan Kim? Now, that is a dumb hypothetical. That's really where you're going to test your love affair for one player. But I understand. I mean, I think a lot of people that are Padres fans would think about that for a second just because they love Hassan Kim. I mean, that point right there just goes to show what Hassan Kim means to the San Diego Padres, what he means to this fan base, how much they love him as a Padre. And we've seen a lot of fan favorites like that throughout the years of the San Diego Padres that they have parted ways with. And it's going to be tough the day that he no longer plays for the San Diego Padres, regardless if that is because of the Padres or if that's because of him getting a better deal in the future, or maybe he retires a Padre. But he has established himself as one of the fan favorites of the San Diego Padres. I don't want to spend too much time on that. That seems to be a very big question in the offseason. And we got lots more to talk about on the show, obviously. But if you do want to join the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We got a lot of people that do want to weigh in on the Hassan Kim news. So we will get back to some of those phone calls. Again, as I mentioned, college basketball later on, 12:30 hour. Are in 12:30 spot of the show. San Diego State, big game tonight against Colorado State. I'll lay out everything that is on the line for that. And the last thing I do want to mention before we get back to the phones, it happens a lot. And you know what? I'm totally for it. You got to be opinionated in this business. You got to be passionate. You got to be opinionated. You got to be knowledgeable. You got to be entertaining, and you got to be relatable. That's what when you do this job, those are the 5 things you got to do. It's poker. Passionate, opinionated, knowledgeable, entertaining, and relatable. And so a lot of my opinions sometimes, especially in critical, and you got to be critical in this business as well. You got to be able to take criticism, and you got to be able to criticize when it's necessary for certain players, certain teams, yada, yada, yada. But I do feel like a lot of criticism now for players, for teams, for organizations, whatever it may be. It seems like there are a lot of people that just assume that if you're critical about something, you're just a hater. And I've seen that. I mean, I saw that during the segment we're talking about the Super Bowl and the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. I went through and laid out some of the pros and cons of both teams, got immediate reaction of, he hates the Chiefs. He hates the Niners. You guys are being haters. So what's the difference? Can you be critical without being a hater? I mentioned that with Brock Purdy. I don't hate Brock Purdy. I just don't think Brock Purdy is as good as the national media says. And I don't like buying into this national media narrative that if a quarterback has a successful season and wins football games, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if he doesn't, he can't play in the league. He sucks. You got to get rid of him. It's the hot take culture that has led to this criticism versus hater. I'm not a hater because I don't think Brock Purdy is that good. It's a great story. It's a great story. Being Mr. Irrelevant, playing quarterback for a team in the NFL in the Super Bowl. But he's not that great. He's okay. He's okay. He's got a lot of weapons around him. The way I view quarterbacks, again, can he do it for somebody else? You could play the hypothetical. Is he better than C.J. Stroud? I don't think he's better than C.J. Stroud. You put C.J. Stroud on the Niners, are they better or worse? They're probably better. It's what you do with those players after he gets that big contract. You saw it with Mahomes, right? Mahomes is great on the rookie deal. He's got surrounded by talent. Went to the Super Bowl. Has now won 2 Super Bowls. Got his big contract. Lost good players. And what is Mahomes doing? He's back in the Super Bowl. He's a good football player. In this era of quarterbacks, he is probably the best quarterback in the National Football League right now. And I don't think too many people argue with that. He definitely is. I don't think this era of quarterbacks is better than the era that just passed us with the Tom Bradys and the Peyton Mannings and the Phillip Rivers and the Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers in his prime. I mean, you go down the list and almost every single team had a stellar quarterback. And I'm probably missing a handful. Now it's like 2 or 3 guys. But Mahomes has beaten the test. It's the same thing with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. Rookie deal. Got to sign him, right? Got to sign him. He just brought us to the Super Bowl. He won us the Super Bowl with Baltimore. He's the future. He's our franchise quarterback. We got to make him the highest paid quarterback in the league. Otherwise, we'll lose him, and who knows what we'll be able to be. They give him that contract, and what did the Ravens do? Immediately went on a downward trajectory because Joe Flacco wasn't a franchise quarterback. He wasn't one of those guys that could carry a team when he has less around him because he's making all the money, because in the NFL, you have a salary cap. So my question is, Mahomes passed the test. The question of Brock Purdy is, can he do that? If you make Brock Purdy the highest paid player on the San Francisco 49ers, and you got to make decisions on Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, and you got to make decisions on Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Chase Young, because you can't keep all of those players. Is Brock Purdy still a good quarterback? Is he still the elite quarterback that everybody talks about? I say no. But that doesn't make me a hater. I don't hate Brock Purdy. It's critical. It's criticism, but I don't hate Brock Purdy. We're going to talk more about that at about 1 o'clock. But I do want to get back into this Padres conversation. We are the flagship of the Padres. We talked about the Hassan Kim thing. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Let's get out to the phones. If you want to mention it in the comments, you could do that as well. I have trying to track it as much as possible, with the YouTube comments. By myself. There are some good ones in there that I could go back and maybe bring up when we come back in the next break. Do want to get a couple phone calls in before we leave. Let's get out to Poway in North County, not East County. Adam in Poway. Adam, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? First of all, shout out John Kater. I miss you, bud. But second, I think it's a great idea to ship Kim. I think it's literally our last option. You know, I know he's one of our favorite Padres as of now, and especially as of last year. But I mean, you look at the season before last year, he was definitely not as good as last year. And I think a lot of people, he got a lot of hype this year because he was actually producing, which was great. And we needed him big time because nobody else was producing. But I mean, do you think he's going to do it again next year? Personally, I don't think so. So, I mean, ship him out, bring in some new people, and let's get it going. That's all I got to say. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate the phone call, Adam. Yes, Hassan Kim. That's a risky take with Hassan Kim, right? Can he continue the production over and over again? It's the same thing like we were talking about with Brock Purdy, right? I think the situation's a little bit different because in baseball, there is really no salary cap. I mean, there's a CBT that deters teams from spending a lot of money. But at the same time, they could still go over if they wanted to. I mean, these teams are not necessarily hampered by the CBT, as you could see by other teams. And the Dodgers know how to manipulate that as well. So, yeah, I'm still in the camp of potentially trading Hassan Kim. You know, I think you could get some value out of him, especially if you want to reset the CBT. But I'd love to see him on the team, too. If the Padres can be able to afford him for what he's going to get paid, which, by the way, we talked about this before. He's getting a shortstop contract. He ain't getting a second base contract. He's getting a shortstop contract. He has not accomplished the same as Xander Bogaerts. In the grand scheme of things, he has not in his major league career accomplished as much as Xander Bogaerts. But he's relatively around the same age going into his free agency as Xander was. You know, minus the World Series and some of the accolades that Xander had already won. But granted, he was with the league a little bit longer than Hassan Kim. And with inflation and way contracts are going, he's probably going to get Xander Bogaerts' contract from somebody. Can you give Hassan Kim a Xander Bogaerts contract and be successful in the future? I don't think so either. I don't think that's the case, especially for a team that, you know, doesn't have the TV contract. We don't know what the money's going to be like. They're resetting the CBT. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't want to give him a Xander Bogart contract. I mean, if he, you know, under 150 million, yeah, sure, sign him up. But for what somebody's willing to pay for Hassan Kim is a lot different than what the Padres are willing to pay. And I think that is the biggest part of this conversation. We'll talk more about that when we come back. We'll get into some of your chats too. There was a good question asked in the chat that we'll talk about when we come back. This is Annie. It's Elsten, but Braden's running the show until Gwen and Chris coming up at 2 o'clock. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Just one day. Which didn't have to be so bad. Wendy cleared Blink-182. I added my own songs to the list as much as the... Get my backpack out of the view. I added my own songs to the rejoiners too, and a lot of these are on the Braden's Apprentice show on the weekends, which I'll be on back on Sunday from 8 to 10, the original time I was supposed to be on until the Super Bowl, obviously. That's going to be a little bit of a change. So it'll be Sunday at normal time, 8 to 10. Saturday up to the Super Bowl, I'll be back on. And then after the Super Bowl, it will be 8 to 10 every single Sunday. Through the baseball season, through college football and the NFL, it'll be a good spot for us to have local programming on 97.3 The Fan on the weekends. It's going to be great for the Padres season. It'll be a little tweener between the pre-show, as you get a little bit of a breakdown after the late night game on Saturday, going into the pregame show with Sam Levitt on Sunday for more Padres baseball. Then during the football season, as one of the resident football guys here at the station, to break down the college football Saturday, preview the NFL Sunday. It'll be a fun time. So I'll be back on 8 to 10, 8 to 10 on Sundays, starting this Sunday. So the question that was interesting that was posed by Jeff Gordon, that's not the Jeff Gordon, even though he has Jeff Gordon's picture. Maybe it is Jeff Gordon. I doubt it. He asked the question in the YouTube chat. And I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people, a little devil's advocate for the diehard Hassan Kim fans, which again, I'm not hating. I'm just saying, I think a business decision needs to be made here with Hassan Kim over an emotional decision. But Jeff Gordon asked, and you can see in the YouTube chat, would you rather have Hassan Kim stay or be traded for a starting pitcher and starting outfielder and see Merrill start? Well, I don't really want to see Merrill start in the outfield, but I know Jeff is talking about Merrill starting at second base. Or maybe you move Cronenworth there. Another possibility. A starting pitcher and an outfielder. I would much rather have a starting pitcher and an outfielder and move Cronenworth to second, or have Merrill play at second than have Hassan Kim. And I think it's a lot of different things. As long as you don't go over the CBT, which I think is assumed here in this part. And as long as you don't have to give up more than just Hassan Kim and you get something good in return, again, those two options, I'm all for it. It's trying to ball on a budget. Padres are trying to ball on a budget. They loaded up their fridge. They got some good steaks in there. They got some good desserts. Might be ramen noodle on the side dish. They've spent all their budget on the main course. They didn't have enough for a solid side. So maybe it's Brussels sprouts on the side. I like Brussels sprouts, though. But that being said, trying to get the most out of this for the Padres while staying under the CBT. You need starting pitching help still. You got top three for sure. You could really use another pitcher because it's going to need 4 to win in the postseason, and that's the ultimate goal. And I still think the Padres lineup, as constructed, can out-compete a lot of mediocre teams in Major League Baseball. You need an outfielder. You don't just need one outfielder, you need 2 outfielders. And I don't want to see Jake Cronenworth in the outfield, and I don't want to see Jackson Merrill in the outfield. And I don't want to see Graham Pauley out there to start the season. I don't want to see any of those guys roaming in the outfield. I think you can pass with Profar out there. Although for a championship team, he's probably a 4th outfielder or a spot off the bench. I think you can do okay with Azokar out there. I think it hurts you in the hitting category, but I think that's okay. One person in the chat says, why not Merrill in the outfield? Because he's a middle infielder, and he's supposed to be a middle infielder on this team. So you can't put a square peg into a round hole if you're the Padres in eliminating his development just so he can play for the major league club, who, by the way, has not had a lot of experience in the minor leagues already. He's already being rushed to the majors. And with the Padres, one of their biggest problems in the last 10 to 15 years has been bringing players up too soon where they don't get the full benefits of those players as replenishing young players at the major league level that they have drafted and developed themselves. That is something that they want to go to. In order to do that, you have to give these guys the best chance at success early on in their career. Yeah, I know Tatis was a shortstop coming up. They moved him, but they let him get established in Major League Baseball doing what he does. He was also a phenom. There wasn't many ways to screw up Fernando Tatis Jr. The guy was always going to be a star. Fernando Tatis Jr. and Jackson Merrill are two totally different players. You need to get Jackson Merrill reps and at-bats and opportunities to play every single day. And if his only way of doing that is playing in the outfield, keep him down in the minor leagues to develop. Too many times you've seen the Padres just force players up here. Because here's the other thing, too. As he's adjusting at a major league level to play in the outfield, it's the mental game and the confidence side of things. You want him to be as comfortable as possible when he makes it to the major leagues. Everything needs to be taken care of for him. Know how he warms up. Know what his pregame meal is. Know what his routines are. So when he gets here, nothing changes from how he prepared for a game in Lake Elsinore to San Antonio to El Paso. It's the same. As dumb as that may sound, that goes a long way. I've brought this up every year since 2020, the article that Kyle Glazier wrote about why the Dodgers are so successful, and that's part of it. Everybody in the Dodgers minor leagues do things the same way as the big league club does in terms of showing up to the facility, getting ready for the game, the schedule. To a T, same as LA. And when those players get to the pros, everybody on the staff in the bigs knows what those minor leaguers need aside from those steps that is personalized for them to be ready to be a team. So, you have to set Jackson Merrill up for success. Middle infield. If he's going to play on this team in 2024, it's because he is a starting second baseman for the Padres. That's how you need to view this. And if that's not the case, let him develop in the minors. He is 1 year away. He is still not at the point where he's going to make a major impact in 2024. The only way he progresses and is on this opening day roster or up at any point in time because he's starting at second base because they need a starting middle infielder. It's the same thing with C.J. Abrams. C.J. Abrams has a lot of potential. C.J. Abrams with Washington starting to figure it out. But I was against starting the year with C.J. Abrams in the big leagues as well because he was coming off the bench or playing a position that wasn't his because it was filled in front of him. If he is not going to be playing every day in his natural position, at least at the beginning of his time in the major leagues, keep him in the minors. So that is my conversation on the Jackson Merrill situation. So yes, I would rather have a starting pitcher and a starting outfielder over Hassan Kim. And if you could trade him to a team that is willing to re-sign him, even better. You might be able to get a better return back with some teams that have outfield help or some starting pitching help. Like the St. Louis Cardinals, perhaps. That might be one of the teams that might fit Hassan Kim, maybe in the future. You'll start looking for other teams that might have a shortstop issue, not necessarily a plethora of outfielders and starting pitching. So to answer Jeff Gordon's question in the chat, yes, I would take a starting pitcher and an outfielder over Hassan Kim for the year. That's a tough sell for a lot of Padres fans because of the fan favorite that he is, but you never know if you might be trading for another fan favorite. Franmil Reyes was a fan favorite for a long time. Not as good as Hassan Kim, but he was a fan favorite. And people were miserable when they traded Franmil Reyes to the Cleveland Guardians. And it worked out for the Padres. It's fine. You can't fall in love with baseball players if you want to be successful. And I get it. I get the fan favorite. He's a good player. It's not like he's just the fan favorite that's not a good player. But from a business perspective, it's probably better off to trade Hassan Kim. Good interaction with the chat, though. Appreciate that. Good topic of discussion. A lot of different ideas getting thrown out for the San Diego Padres. When we come back, Aztecs got a huge game tonight against Colorado State. I'm going to let you know what's on the line aside from just winning a conference game. When we come back, Annie and Elsten, I'm Braden Soprenet filling in, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Annie and Elsten on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. I'm Braden Soprenic filling in. Craig, a little bit under the weather. Annie is doing a lot around town right now, doing a great job of planning a major event in San Diego, which, by the way, if you've never been able to attend that, or if you ever get the opportunity to attend the Salute the Champions dinner, it's a must attend. I went to it a couple of years ago when Rob Machado was inducted in. I was able to go with 97.3 The Fan. It was a great event that Annie has put on for the last couple of years, and this year is going to be even better than it already has. You've had the great memories of this event with Phillip Rivers, emotionally talking about San Diego, and this year we're going to have Eric Weddle being inducted. He joined us last week. He's a great guy to talk to. The thing about Eric Weddle is he's just such a cool dude. Like, he just goes around, and he said it on the show, but I've had experience with this through some family and friends. But, he's a head coach at Rancho Bernardo High School. He's turned down multiple chances at coaching in the NFL because he likes being here in San Diego. Obviously, he's got kids he's raising here in San Diego. I think he's going to do a good job of getting Rancho Bernardo on track. Not to say that they weren't, but he's going to turn that program into a place to be in high school football for sure. But I mean, he's just so cool in the community. He's not about himself. He's about everybody else, and enjoys being part of everybody here in San Diego. And my brother a couple of summers ago was working at Board and Brew in Poway. He was they have at Board and Brew, they have because it is board and brew. I mean, wasn't a bartender, but he was a beer pourer because they only have beer at the Board and Brews, at least some of the select ones. And so he was working the bar or whatever, and Eric Weddle came in for his pickup, and my brother got to talk to him for like 5 minutes about just the Chargers leaving and all this other stuff, and he was just so likable and approachable. He's a little intimidating because you see Eric Weddle, like, oh my God, it's Eric Weddle. But if you just say hi, you see him around town, he's got to say hi back, and he will talk to you. I mean, he's that type of guy, and to see him get inducted into the Hall of Fame here in town is going to be top notch. I mean, he's a real dude, and it's pretty cool to see him in being honored at the Salute the Champions dinner. So that'll be a great event. Annie's put a lot of time and effort into it. I know it's going to go well for her next week. And so we've had a little bit of less time with Annie, but she's doing a lot right now behind the scenes all over the place. So a big thanks to her for being part of our show earlier today. I want to talk about some college basketball. San Diego State's got a huge game tonight against Colorado State. If you look at the standings right now, the Aztecs still keeping pace with the top echelon of the Mountain West Conference. The two top teams in the Mountain West, Utah State and New Mexico. Aztecs have yet to play Utah State, but they'll play them coming up on Saturday, which will be a huge game for the Aztecs to get back into, the lead spot of the Mountain West Conference. Does that really mean anything in the grand scheme of things if you're talking national championships? No. But in reality, in college basketball, if you win the conference outright in the regular season, I know you don't get an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. It's just strictly for the tournament to make the conference tournaments exciting. But everybody knows who the best team is in the conference based on the outright champion. And San Diego State is fortunate enough nowadays, and talk about this 15, 20 years ago, the Mountain West Conference is a 5-bid league. It might even be a 6-bid league, depending on how Nevada Reno plays and maybe this Colorado State team. But that loss that they had last week against Wyoming is a tough loss for Colorado State and their overall opportunity to make as an at-large bid. But they could get 6 teams in if one of those teams wins the conference tournament. But to think of the Aztecs now not having to go to Vegas and win 3 games in a row over a weekend in a conference tournament to make the NCAA tournament is great. And so it really puts a calming emphasis on the rest of the season here for San Diego State. They can't cruise. They can't just get there and cruise to the finish line. But the best goal for them right now is to try to win the regular season conference and prove that they're the best team in the Mountain West, which I still think that they are. I mean, tough sledding against New Mexico and Boise State on the road. You're going to have tough road games. They're even tougher now with the opponents. You're not going to ever get credit for it. I mean, think about the places that San Diego State's lost this year. Boise State's tough place to play. Not a lot of schools go in there and win. New Mexico at the Pit. It's called the Pit for a reason. Not only is it underground, high altitude, very difficult place to play. Not a lot of teams are playing that team. Not a lot of schools are signing up to go to New Mexico and play a non-conference game. San Diego State's got to do it in conference. The loss at Grand Canyon, same thing. That is a very difficult place to get a victory in college basketball that nobody talks about. They have like a cult following, and the basketball is the big show there at Grand Canyon. It's an up-and-coming school. Getting a lot more kids to attend that school. They're trying to push with their basketball program. They've done a great job doing that. Another place that Power 5 schools aren't going to sign up to play, and San Diego State did. They've got a win at the Kennel up at Gonzaga. I know Gonzaga is not what they used to be, but they're still really good, and it's still very difficult to win in Spokane. Something else San Diego State has done. So tonight they take on Colorado State, a Colorado State team that's coming off of a terrible loss to Wyoming, a loss in which they led by as many as 11 points with a minute to go, and they lost 79-76 after coming off a tough loss on the road to Nevada, 77-64. San Diego State can really probably put the final nail in the Colorado State Rams coffin for their season if they could go up to Fort Collins and get a W tonight at 6 o'clock on CBS Sports Network and basically eliminate them from Mountain West Conference play while still keeping pace with Utah State, New Mexico, who San Diego State plays on Saturday. They will play the Utah State Aggies for a major game in the West Coast Conference that ultimately is part of a insane college basketball week in the sport. If you like basketball, if you like college basketball, this is the week for you. The Super Tuesday level event tonight with so many big games that are ranked games throughout the country. I mean, TCU plays Texas Tech. That might be a little bit closer to my heart than most people, but you got Duke, North Carolina this week. You got Tennessee, Kentucky this week. I mean, the list goes on with the basketball games, and you got a great opportunity for San Diego State to try to climb themselves back into a top 25 spot with a victory tonight against Colorado State. The only thing that they can't do is overlook this game, which I don't think they will, to get ready for Utah State at Viejas, which will be on Fox. That is a major game on a major network for the Aztecs. Something they haven't had a lot of success with on the last couple Saturdays. It's been tough for San Diego State to win on a Saturday in national television, but those are two very important games for San Diego State. In terms of what is on the line in terms of the NCAA tournament, again, I have had my fits, if you will, with Joe Lunardi this year. Most of them are personal about the Frogs, which is fine. Nobody cares but me. But if you beat two teams in the top 10 in the same week and then lose two games on the road in conference, one on the road in conference and one at home, also to a ranked team, you shouldn't go from being ranked to not even in the tournament on the evaluation from Joe Lunardi. He's got a science to it. I disagree with that science in this particular case, but the guy still knows his stuff. And what is on the line now, to roll back to San Diego State, as it sits for the Aztecs, they are currently a 5 seed going into the NCAA tournament, which is a lot of time to change, obviously. We haven't even started February. We haven't even started February yet going into March Madness and conference tournament time. But San Diego State, 5 seed, potentially playing Richmond the 12, paired up with Duke as the 4 and Charlotte the 13 in Spokane, Washington in the East region, which rolls through Boston. That is currently the established spot for the Aztecs right now. So anybody that's driving around listening, San Diego State, about how the year they're having a good year. They're 16-4. They're 5-2 in conference. They're in a great position here to win the Mountain West. And if the season ended today, more likely than not, they'd be around a 5 seed. which always leads to the question of, do you want to be a 5 seed in the East region where you have to fly to Boston for the Sweet 16, or do you want to be a 6 or 7 seed in the West region when you can drive to Los Angeles for the Sweet 16? I prefer the West region, but a 5 seed for San Diego State would be good. If they end up getting a 4 seed, they probably would get bumped to the West region. So that's huge on the line. This is all just kind of fun speculation, though, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter until you get to March. Teams that are last in the tournament right now: Memphis, Texas, Providence, Texas A&M, last 4 byes. Last teams in: Nebraska, Seton Hall, Colorado. Boise State is currently the last team in. So they're going to be playing for their lives the next couple of weeks, and it's a big spot for whether or not the Mountain West will get 5 teams in the tournament or not. First 4 out: Villanova, Cincinnati, Washington State, and Gonzaga. I couldn't imagine an NCAA tournament without Gonzaga. Next 4 out: Oregon, K-State, Florida, and Butler. 5 teams potentially coming out of the Mountain West Conference. I mentioned this in the open. Of this hour. San Diego State could potentially be playing in a conference this year that will get more bids than the ACC and the Pac-12 combined. As of right now, the Pac-12 and the ACC combined are going to get 6 teams into the tournament, potentially. San Diego State and the Mountain West are expected to get 5 teams in the tournament. I mean, I can't believe where the Mountain West has gotten in college basketball. It's great to see. Embracing basketball as a sport. You're seeing the Big 12 do that right now with everybody circling around college athletics in football. There are some conferences, not the Power 2 with the Big 10 and the SEC, but there are some conferences that know that there's money to be made in college basketball. And you could go that direction and be a college basketball conference. And San Diego State is starting to turn into that. Big 12's already done that, and they're adding better teams next year with Arizona coming to town in the Big 12. The Big 12 basketball, I got to say, is just top-notch watch right now. It's just top-notch watch. It'd be great to see San Diego State in that conference as well, but the battles I've seen in the Big 12 conference this year has been exceptional. Tonight's no different, as my TCU Horned Frogs will take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders at 4 o'clock on ESPN2. I'll be dialed to that. 15th ranked Texas Tech, 25th ranked TCU. Games in Fort Worth. I've already seen New York Mike try to pop off about the Red Raiders. I don't know if he has any affiliation with that or not, but New York Mike 8. Go Red Raiders tonight. I disagree. I will say Raider Red is a top 5 mascot in all of college athletics. That's another talking point for a different day. But big week in college basketball, huge game tonight, even bigger game on Saturday for the Aztecs. I mean, you can go through the slate if you want to see, but there are some great games in college basketball over the next week, starting tonight with Aztecs and Rams. You got Texas Tech, TCU, Marquette's playing Villanova tonight, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Utah State's in action tonight too, for all of you that want a scoreboard watch in the Mountain West Conference. And then coming up on Saturday, unreal slate: Tennessee, Kentucky, Utah State, San Diego State, Texas TCU, going down the list. 4th ranked Houston, 8th ranked Kansas, Cincinnati's out in Lubbock to take on Texas Tech, BYU, West Virginia's tough, Duke, North Carolina, Iowa State, Baylor, and then Colorado State will go down to Fresno State as we take a look at some of the ranked teams in action. That's all coming up on a very huge Saturday slate in college basketball. So it is downtime right now in sports, especially in America's finest city. Not a lot to talk about with the Padres. Not too much to talk about now with the NFL. There's only so much time you could spend talking about the Super Bowl for 2 weeks. We know what the matchup is. I don't know how much we can potentially spend on that. You got the Pro Bowl on Sunday. NBA mid-season. NHL mid-season. Still got a long way to go for both of those leagues. College basketball, San Diego State. Got to get your sports fix. This is the week to do it. Tune in some college basketball. It's going to be awesome this week in the college basketball realm. I had a great time watching on Saturday. I wasn't supposed to be watching, but I had a great time watching on Saturday. Is that frowned upon? Is that another topic to discuss? What sports teams are you allowed to watch at a wedding? I know Adam Klug's probably watched his Falcons or some teams at a wedding before. I'm sure he has pulled out his phone and done that at least a couple of times.
NFC Championship game against the Niners when they blew a massive lead.
Definitely something worth
But
justifying.
I'm not bitter.
I could tell. You had to sit through a wedding for that. Maybe more of that talk when we come back on Annie and Elsten. Braden Suprenant, 97.3 The Fan.
The good times start now. Here are your hosts, Annie and Elsten, on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Welcome back to Annie and Elsten. I'm Braden Suprenant. San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Craig out due to an illness. He's on the IL right now, and hopefully we'll get him back later in the week. Annie started the show with us, but had to do a lot of different things throughout San Diego today involving her big event that she's been planning, working so hard on. And we're here to support at 97.3 The Fan. So I will be running for the final hour here of the show as we get you ready for Tony Gwynn Jr., Chris Ello, and Matt Scraby for Gwynn and Chris, followed up by the Scraby Show an hour after that. I will be back on, obviously, the rest of the week with Andy Nelson, except for Friday. Friday, I'm taking some time to go speak at Career Day at my alma mater and the school that I coach at, Cathedral Catholic High School. They're doing a career day for their alumni coming out to talk to the juniors at Cathedral. So I'm going to volunteer my time for that coming up on Friday. So I will be out on the show on Friday and then back on Sunday, the Braden Surprenant show from 8 to 10 in the morning. Get you a nice little weekend recap of the sports week, especially involving San Diego. We'll recap San Diego State's big game against Utah State coming up on Saturday. That's going to be the place to be here in town in the sports world. That's a huge game for the Aztecs against the Aggies. Also, I mean, we could talk about the Pro Bowl if you want. Does anybody watch the Pro Bowl? Does anybody care about the Pro Bowl? Is that the worst All-Star game in all of sports? Is it worse than the NBA All-Star game? Does anybody care about it anymore?
Well, it's not even an actual game anymore. It's
like 7-on-7 flag, right? Don't they do like the 7-on-7 game? I mean, the contest stuff's kind of fun. They used to do that back in the day. I swear, when I was a kid, they'd have the little the quarterback would do the throwing contest. They have all the little games and things. I think that's kind of fun. I like seeing, these athletes really show off their athletic ability with different skill sets that you're not used to seeing. But the actual game itself, the 7-on-7 flag football game that they do, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I understand why they do it.
Let me just throw this in because you mentioned the San Diego State-Utah State game. We'll be giving away a pair of tickets on all three talk shows during tomorrow.
We'll give those away tomorrow.
Listen tomorrow all day on 97.3 The Fan.
That is the place
now I go
to
away.
Be. That is the place to be. You want to be at Viejas Arena on Saturday afternoon. It's a 12:30 tip on Saturday on Fox, on big TV. You want to be at Viejas Arena. Your only chance probably to do that, if you don't already have season tickets, is to listen to 97 through the Fan tomorrow. And we'll be giving away 2 tickets on each show. Get to Viejas. Go support the Aztecs. It's a great basketball team over there. National champion runner-up, a regional winner from a year ago in a big game against a ranked opponent on Saturday. San Diego San Diego State student section is going to be on fire. Alex, you're correct on that one. I think the Pro Bowl is kind of lame now because they don't play. I understand why they do it. I mean, you got to try to grow the game somehow. The NFL is really pushing flag football. And to be honest with you, it's a good way to get younger kids to play without having to do tackle football. I'm a firm believer. We've talked about this before on shows, but I think once you get to 6th grade, it's probably a good time to start playing tackle football. If you want to wait later, you can. I don't really think anybody should be playing tackle football before they're in 6th grade. That's kind of the way I was brought up, from a football coach as my dad. My parents had the rule you could play once you start 6th grade around 12 years old. I'm cool with that. I think that's a safe move for a lot of parents. But that doesn't mean parents shouldn't have the opportunity, shouldn't be able to make the choice themselves. I know that was a big political topic in California the last couple of years, and the most recent one got shut down by Gavin Newsom. So that's good to see. I want to have everybody have the opportunity to play football if they want to play football. But flag football as an alternative as a kid is great. It's a good way to get kids involved with the sport. And you want to try to grow the sport as much as possible. I love the fact that CIF San Diego has girls high school football. It's great. They got flag football, 7-on-7. It is the NFL rules, so it's a lot more passing than running, but it's a fun sport. It's a fun sport to attend, to watch, to play. It's a great opportunity for girls in San Diego to play football, and they're continuing to grow that. They're going to do it again with the Olympics. So, from the standpoint of trying to grow the game. I understand why they do the 7-on-7 Pro Bowl, but that's not what I want to see. I want to see these guys play real football, which they would never be able to do, because if you play afraid to get hurt, you will get hurt. And, you can't have guys going hard in a meaningless game, especially with the amount of games that they play. So there's really no answer for the Pro Bowl or an option for it. The skills competition is cool, but there's still no game. I used to like the baseball one when it mattered. I think it is dumb to determine the home field advantage of the World Series based on an all-star game. I think that is dumb, but I think you need some type of incentive for these guys to go hard, because those games were always intense for that reason. I mean, it's not too many guys that play for like the sake of playing anymore, but the incentive of the World Series, I mean, you got guys battling out there. That was fun. NBA is kind of like a fun talent show, I guess, just crazy dunks and things, but I think the skills competition for the NBA is better than anything else. I do love the NHL All-Star game with the 3-on-3 tournament. They do a 3-on-3 tournament as they have the all-star teams per division, and then they battle it out in a tournament. That's fun. That's pretty cool. That might be the best one. That'd be kind of cool to see for baseball. Do like a tournament, like 3-inning tournament. Do a couple of, and have the NL West play the AL Central or something like that, and you could rotate through, do a little round-robin game. Break it up into 3 innings each and flip the teams and go from there. And whoever has the most runs scored at the end wins. I mean, you could do some crazy things with that. It'd be kind of fun. It'd be cool to see the NL West probably the best team. The amount of talent we got here out on the West Coast. But that's all on the All-Star games. Again, I'll be on Sunday from 8 to 10 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97 through the Fan, for the Braden Soprano Show. But I did want to bring up a topic. We talked about it briefly. Talked about it briefly to start the noon hour because I wanted to tease this spot. I think it's very interesting to talk about because I've seen it a lot. I mean, you guys in the comments, it's just like, Braden's a hater on this. He's a hater on that. No, he likes this. No, he likes that. It's like, okay. Thanks for interacting with the chat. Appreciate it. There's a lot of noise in the chat, which is fine. And on the phone calls. But in this day and age where you bring up any type of criticism on anybody, be athletes, could be sports teams, could be the sport itself, could be politicians, anything. Could be criticism on how you get through TSA at the airport. Does it make you a hater? I don't necessarily know it does. I know a lot of people say that. I mean, we talked about the Chiefs and the Niners making the Super Bowl. And I said, well, the Niners got to cover these 3 players. These are the 3 main players for Kansas City. And outside of that, they don't really do anything else. That would be Kelsey and Rashid Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. And outside of that, not a lot really happening for the Chiefs. Immediately, Braden's a hater of the Chiefs. This is his old hatred for the Chiefs. He was a Chargers fan. He's showing his true colors of the Chiefs. No, this is what they are. It's a little bit of a criticism, I guess, that you really only have a 3-headed monster back there. It's a good team. It's not a great team. We hyped up Kansas City in the spot, too. Andy and I did. Really good. They got a better quarterback in Mahomes. They got better weapons. No, they don't have better weapons. They have a better defense than San Francisco. And the immediate narrative is like, you're saying the Chiefs are unbeatable. They can never be beaten. And you're the hater on the Niners. You're a Niners hater. You're a Brock Purdy hater. I don't hate the Niners. I don't hate either team. I don't care. A little bit of criticism. I talked about it with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is not an elite quarterback. He's not. He hasn't been. He's never been an elite quarterback. That's why he was Mr. Irrelevant. He's a solid quarterback. He's good. He's serviceable. He's not an elite quarterback. There's not many elite quarterbacks around anymore, period. We missed that stage. That stage is over. The new era of quarterback, which I think there's a lot of things to be said about, these Elite 11 camps and 7-on-7 and not teaching younger quarterbacks how to handle pressure, how to be able to play when your own line's not very good. And I think it's developing a lot of bad quarterback play in the National Football League. I think you see it on display every Sunday. It's not like the era of Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees. You keep going down the list. Peyton Manning. Those are all guys that continue to have success even after their rookie contract because they were elite quarterbacks. You can make your opinion on some of those if you want. But all of those players were able to make playoff runs despite the roster around them. Elite quarterback play. Brock Purdy has success. Doesn't turn the ball over too much. Hits open receivers. Has a lot of weapons around him. Has a good defense by him. Got a great front seven defensively. Great offensive line. Great left tackle. Does he do that somewhere else? No. Is he a good fit for San Francisco? Yeah, they love him. It's great. Doesn't turn the ball over. Doesn't make a lot of bad mistakes. Doesn't make a lot of bad throws. He makes a couple bad throws. He's gotten away with throws hitting somebody in a different jersey in the hands and him not hanging on to the ball. But he's not an elite quarterback. If the Niners had the option, no questions asked, and the new player and this guy would fill in and know everything in terms of the playbook and everything in chemistry, all that stuff. If the Niners had the opportunity right now to flip Brock Purdy and Matt Stafford, no questions asked, they would do it in a heartbeat. Brock Purdy is serviceable. He does a good job, but he's not Tom Brady, and he's not Patrick Mahomes, and he's not Aaron Rodgers, and he's not Peyton Manning. And he's not even in the same conversation as any of those guys. And you start going through the list of current quarterbacks. He ain't C.J. Stroud, the rookie phenom in Houston, who does not have nearly as much talent as Brock Purdy. All of that being said, I don't hate Brock Purdy. It's criticism. This is a show. This is an industry based off criticism. Sports industry, media industry. Not everything is always perfect and everything's always great. You have to hold certain players and teams accountable for certain things. People always say I'm a Chargers hater. I'm a little bit of a Chargers hater for them leaving. I will admit that. But all the points I bring up are not just because I hate them. They're all valid points. I'm a fair guy. I think hiring Jim Harbaugh was a great move for them. I don't trust that they're going to be able to have success with that because of the way things are set up in Chargers land. I said Jim Harbaugh, this might be his last job. Not because he's not good at it. Not because he can't do it later in his life. Not because he's too old. But he's 60. How many more times is he going to want to start over somewhere after this contract? I mean, it might be the last opportunity for him to coach because he doesn't want to do it more than what he's doing right now. Maybe that's why he took the job. He wants to move back to California. He wants to stay in California. Maybe he gets a contract extension. Same with Bill Belichick. He's 72. What does Bill Belichick need to do at this point? I mean, win a Super Bowl without Brady, I guess, to appease some national media people. But as I mentioned, I mean, I think Jim Harbaugh is a good football coach. His shtick gets old for a lot of players. Doesn't mean I'm a hater of Jim Harbaugh. Doesn't mean I'm a hater of the Chargers, even though I am a little bit because they left. But can you criticize without being labeled a hater? I think everybody just wants to. I think it's just a simple buzzword to use all the time. Well, you're just a hater. Airport security in Arizona was a cluster. It was a circus because they had one lane open. They should have opened up some other lanes. It's criticism. I'm not a hater of airport security, TSA agents. It's criticism. Does it have to go with people not being able to handle criticism? I mean, I see all this stuff all the time. And at first in my young career, it used to bug me a lot more than it does now. And there's times where you are being a hater. But just because you're saying something negative about something does not make you a hater. It's just calling out what it is. I don't hate Taylor Swift. I don't hate Travis Kelce. Well, I'm not a big fan of Travis Kelce. I think some of the stuff he does is fake. Not the Taylor Swift thing. I mean, I'm sure that's real. But, there's some of his like kind of fake tough guy attitude out there is kind of ridiculous. But, he's definitely tougher than me. I mean, I'm not going to start a fight with him. But, he does a couple of things that are annoying for a lot of people. Doesn't make me a hater. I think showing Taylor Swift a lot on TV is annoying. I don't hate it. It's just kind of annoying. So there's a difference between some criticism and hatred. And I think people need to understand that a lot in sports. You can go out there and talk about a lot of these things. I don't think Jose Azocar can get it done in center field for the Padres as an everyday starter. Doesn't make me a hater of Jose Azocar. Never met the guy. I don't care. I just don't think he'd get the job done out there. Hopefully he proves me wrong. But I'm not a Jose Azocar hater. Same thing with Trent Grisham. I mean, Trent Grisham had so much potential as a San Diego Padre. It's another topic we talked about earlier in the show. So much potential. Could have been a leadoff hitter for the Padres with the way he grinds out at bats, the way he controls the box. But he never got the job done. The Gold Glove outfielder. I understand that. He's got to be able to hit the ball every once in a while. I'm glad the Padres parted ways with Trent Grisham. I don't hate the guy. I'm not a Trent Grisham hater. It was time to move on. And those things are okay. You can say those things. You can have you can hold players accountable. You can have this kind of level of criticism and not be labeled a hater. The difference to me is, just hating on guys just to hate on them. Like for little things. If you don't praise them when things go well, you can't. If you can't praise them when they do things well and you just find other nitpicky things to hate on, you're just a hater. That's the difference. I could say it all I want about the Chargers. I do give them credit when credit is due. I thought the Jim Harbaugh hire was good. I thought the roster they had last year was solid. I thought Tom Telesco did a good job. I think Justin Herbert is a franchise-level quarterback. But that being said, they'll find ways to screw things up because they always do. A little bit of hater in there. But for the most part, I'm going to give them credit when credit's due. Same thing with the Pods. A player does things wrong. I'm going to call them out on it. Anything that they do right, I'm also going to say they did it right. Manny Machado gets a lot of grief for not running out to first. There's some times where he probably has to, but at the end of the day, guy makes unbelievable plays. You need him in the lineup. If he gets hurt running down to first base in a meaningless game in June, you're going to be more pissed off about him missing 6 weeks than you are about him not beating out a throw in Colorado. There's a difference between being a hater and having some criticism. Philip, how are you on the way to work and texting me at the same time, bud? Come on, man. Stay focused on the road. I did get to the point. I made the point, as Adam Paul has pointed out. See, there I'd say Philip the Great is being a hater. Or is he criticizing? You be the judge. When we come back, I'm going to talk more about the San Diego Padres. We'll get into some more of your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Feel free to reach out in the chat. Annie and Elsten off, Braden Soprenet in, right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
You can
125 on what's today? Tuesday? It's Tuesday. I can't believe it's already Tuesday. You get confused when you're not working on Fridays doing the Don's Alumni Career Day. I will be at that. It'll be a good time. Did you know you can listen to 97 through the fan with your smart speaker? Ask your device, play 97 through the fan to give it a shot. Braden Sprint filling in for Annie and Elsten. Annie was on the show at the beginning part of the show, and then now she's doing a lot of stuff for her hard work of the Salute to Champions dinner. Craig is a little under the weather as he's battling through a lot of different things he has to do as well. Everything with the soccers and the podcast he does and everything throughout his life. So a little bit worn down here is the Annie and Elsten show. So we are ready to go with Braden Sprint in for Annie and Elsten. We're talking a lot. I mean, I could talk to Adam Klug about NFL draft stuff all day and NFL stuff all day. But obviously it's not a main focus for San Diego anymore with, the Chargers not being here and not having an NFL team. I mean, I don't dive into the NBA draft because never had really a team. There'd be no reason to talk about it here in San Diego either, but a lot of different fun stuff. We will, I think, tease down the future. Might have something involved with the NFL draft coming up. So that is a possibility. Yes, it is. We're going to be doing an NFL draft show with myself, Chris Ello, and Matt Scraby later on in April when the draft is around. And no, it does not conflict with the Padres, obviously, why we are able to do that. So, filling in for Annie and Elsten, we were talking about the difference between criticism and being a hater. I think I laid that out. Of course, some people didn't think so, but it's fine. I do want to mention, we talked about it going into this last hour. I was at a wedding over the weekend. There's a big game on for TCU. Now, is it an important game in terms of playoff or postseason or anything of that nature? No. I mean, it was a road game against a rival in Baylor. It was a ranked road game in college basketball, and it's a big game for TCU. Obviously, one of the biggest games that they've played in college basketball. And so that was kind of like the main focal point of a lot of the morning. I don't know, like, for me, it's maybe because I've been a part of 2 weddings. Usually when you're a part of the wedding, I mean, do you have to get there like ridiculously early? I was there at 10 a.m. for a 3:30 wedding. I was in the wedding. So we didn't really need to set up or anything. We didn't take pictures, but we didn't end up taking pictures like 2:00. I mean, was there a reason for me to be there at 10 in the morning with nothing to do? I mean, I could watch college basketball, but I knew with the TCU game tipping off at 1 p.m. Mountain Time that I was going to run into some picture problems where I'm going to have to watch the game remotely or pause watching the game to take pictures. And of course, my luck, the game decides to be this ridiculously long triple overtime game where it ends up leaking into the reception where I was watching on my phone for the cocktail hour. I could not have my phone. If I were to pull out my phone during the actual ceremony, I would never do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Elisa, we couldn't drink there. You were not allowed to drink until the thing started, which was dumb. But, it is what it is. Local rules. That's fine. Whatever. I think that is over the top. But what is justifiable on like sports and weddings? Because it is a hot button issue. I mean, I try not to watch sports, but so far I'll put it this way. When my buddy Seth got married, there was nothing on that I needed to worry about. None of my teams were playing. TCU football was on a bye. It was the only thing that could have taken up my time. It was on a Saturday. I did not watch any other college football that day, and I was in the wedding. Just don't need to. If you're watching just random football just to watch football, I think you have a problem. If it's your own team, I think it's okay. That's where I stand on the watching at an event you probably shouldn't be watching on your phone with, like weddings. I don't want to talk about funerals, but weddings especially. I think it's fine if it's your team. I think if it's not your team, I don't think it's justifiable. I don't think you could justify watching just sports on. Then you're just the sports guy. It's like you have to engage with other people. Big events. If you get married during the Super Bowl, you're asking for trouble. I will say that. Because there is somebody in the comments over here said he went to a quinceañera one time and the dad put a boxing match in the middle. It was Canelo Pacquiao. But Canelo Pacquiao is fair. That is fair. That's a big event. That is a major event. If it's not your team or a major event like the Super Bowl, big fight, World Series, maybe, there's no reason to be watching sports at a wedding. I had my team. They were playing Baylor, who is a big rival. I would imagine most San Diego State Aztec. Wow, Adam, geez. Adam Paul in the chat. I've had an earpiece in during a funeral before. It better have been one of your teams. That is insane. I would never do that. But that's where I draw a line. Like, I knew I was going to get crap. My mom was going to give me crap anyway at the wedding for watching sports. I mean, I was walking down the stairs, being part of the wedding party, getting introduced at the reception, right? They have the wedding party come out. Oh, look, here's Braden and Sarah. Whatever. I had my phone in my hand all the way to the point they announced my name, and then I had to pocket it right with like 2 seconds left in triple overtime and a 3-point in a 1-point lead for TCU. They were about to shoot free throws to finally put the game on ice. And I had to ask my table who won because I knew for a fact one of my buddies was going to have it out on his phone.
What about DVRing the game and just watching it later?
That is such a thing of the past. Nobody does that anymore.
I did it fairly recently on a really big game and watched the game when I got home at like midnight. The entire thing from start to finish.
I don't think, I couldn't do that. DVR the game because somebody's gonna ruin it for you.
Put your phone on do not disturb so you don't get updates and notifications.
But then, like, you're talking with people, like, oh yeah, like you know the Frogs. Oh, I saw they won today, and it only takes one person to not know the situation to blow it for you. Like, here's the case in point. On the way home from the wedding, I was flying Southwest. You could watch live TV on the flight, and I was watching right before I got on the flight. Because my dad was picking me up. And we just wanted to watch the AFC Championship game uninterrupted. He said, don't tell me anything about the game because I'm going to record it so I can pick you up. So now I felt guilted, like I couldn't watch the game on the plane. I still did anyway. I still watched the game on the plane anyway. But now I land, I just be like dead silent the whole time. Like, oh, I don't know what's going on in the game. I was like, it is halftime. And then when you tell like your dad that it's halftime, again, they'd be like, well, I told you not to tell me. I said, it's halftime. I didn't tell you anything. I just said it was halftime. But to me, if you're going to watch sports at a wedding, it better be your team or it better be a major event. I don't think that's really asking for too much. How many times have you watched one of your teams at a wedding, Adam?
At a wedding?
Or a major event?
I mean, a couple of times, a big Georgia football game during the year, but I haven't had too many huge events like weddings and stuff recently, as you get older and older.
Right, that is true.
But I mean,
what about one of your kids' events?
Oh,
Have you ever watched?
I watched the Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game a couple months ago, last month, while at my son's soccer game.
I think that's fair.
I had an earpiece in with my phone out.
That's fine.
While he's running around playing soccer,
watching a sport. I think it'd be different if it was like a major, like, I don't know, graduations or like religion events, if you will. Catholics have like baptism,
where there's a
first
ceremony,
communion, like
that's
ceremony,
some
type of ceremony. What if it was like your kids, like, they do like pageants, like Christmas pageants or whatever? What if it was like one of those things? Is that justified?
I mean, like my daughter's old enough. She's had some stuff like at religious school, and I would not be, in synagogue, let's say, with my phone, with
that's like.
But again, that's when I would DVR it.
Yeah, that's a good DVR.
All right, you want me to embarrass myself?
I mean, if you brought it up, I mean,
a couple years ago, it was the year the Braves won the World Series. I was born and raised in Atlanta.
Fair.
My wife and I went to a Dan and Shay concert.
Okay.
And it was during, I forget which round. It was one of the earlier rounds. I DVR'd the entire Braves playoff game, got home from the concert, and watched from start to finish every single pitch. And it was like an exciting game with a walk-off hit. I'm screaming in my living room at 1 o'clock in the morning to something that already happened and everybody else is already celebrating.
Everybody around the nation already knows the Braves are fine and they're all done. I don't mind the taping thing. That's fine. Nobody tapes games anymore, or at least that I know. I don't know anybody that tapes games anymore. I mean, a lot of these games, like on streaming, they just save and then you can go back and watch them later. But it's interesting topic of discussion. I got a lot of crap for it, but everybody else was watching the game on their phone. It's not just me. The same thing happened to me at a wedding one time. I know we got to take a break. I was at my other college roommate's wedding last summer when TCU was in the super regional in baseball. And we went to the first game because the first game was the night before. And so I got to go to the first super regional game because it was in Fort Worth where the wedding was. And then the second game was during his actual wedding during the reception. And I was watching the game on my phone with my two buddies. And my mom's like, what are you like? She texted me somehow that somebody took a picture of me and sent it. And my mom was like, what are you doing? Go talk to everybody else. And I said, well, the girl sitting across from me is watching the same game on her phone. Like, we're watching the game. This is on them for scheduling a wedding during a major TCU event. But that was my experience with that. It was now I got a great story about watching the game. I mean, I'm walking down the steps as TCU's beating Baylor in triple overtime. Would have been nice to sit down and watch it. Maybe I can go back and watch it, but what do you say? 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Sam, you got to turn your phone off if you don't want the game to be ruined. That's a fact. Then I can't use my phone. I can't use my phone at all. There's a lot of problems when you tape the game. Braden Soprano filling in for Andy and Elsten. When we come back, final hurrah of the show. Go back to some baseball and some Padres talk. Are the Padres good enough to be a team that has a resurgent, or should I say breakout year? We'll talk about that when we come back on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Now you've sparked the conversation about recording live sports, Adam. Never record live sports. Never record live sports. It's something you can't do. It's too hard. There's too many outside factors with that.
Well,
on
the other
recording
thing I
live
didn't
sports.
mention last segment I was telling you is like, you know, when you become a dad and it's like it's bath time, it's the kid try to
Right.
bathe the kids. You can either miss the game or just listen to it in an earpiece. But if you really want to watch it, you got to record the second half.
I think you can. I think that's easier to record because there's less people you have to interact with to accidentally tell you the score. It's not like your kids aren't going to tell you the score, and that's time you turn your phone off with your buddies texting during the game, like everybody else does, and you can pause the game and dive in right then. This one was good. You threw it up on the thing, Joshua Walker's chat. If you want to throw it back up there, I don't have the ability to do that for some reason. But Joshua Walker in the chat says, I was in a wedding that another groomsman was late because he was watching a Vikings-Bears game, ... He is a Chargers fan. That is inexcusable. You can't justify that. I'm sorry. You can't justify that. It's not your team. You can't be watching sports at the wedding that isn't your team. I'll give you a pass if it's your team because I'm giving myself a pass on it being my team. If it's not your team or a major event like the Super Bowl championship game, then it's not justified. Unless anybody else has any other comments on that. But that's where we're going to leave it. Major League Baseball. Here's a more Major League Baseball talk. We talked a lot of Padres earlier on the show. Again, this is Annie and Elsten. I'm Braden Soprenet filling in for both of them. They're out today. Annie was on the first 2 hours of the show. If you want to hear from Annie today, you can rewind the Audacy app or go check out our podcasts that are posted online, wherever you get your podcast content. We talked a lot of Padres baseball earlier on in the show. We've talked about whether or not there is some sort of remorse, not really remorse, I guess, regret about trading Trent Grisham, especially in a state now for the Padres where they really need some outfielders in the outfield. We've talked about the possibility of trading Hassan Kim. We've talked about, just a lot of baseball topics in general. There's ways you can find baseball conversations in arguably the hardest week of all of sports talk radio the next 2 weeks, especially here in San Diego. The 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, 2 hardest weeks in sports talk radio because there's nothing else going on. Except for that one game. It's only 2 weeks away. You're not going to hype up the Pro Bowl. You can talk about college basketball, which I already mentioned. It's a big week for college basketball and a huge week for San Diego State. Having to play in a tough environment in Fort Collins tonight at 6. And then, of course, a big game at Viejas Arena against Utah State, which, by the way, we're giving away tickets for on tomorrow's show. That's the place you need to be on Saturday if you're a big sports fan, at Viejas Arena to watch the Aztecs take on the Aggies of Utah State. Get your tickets by tuning in tomorrow to all 3 of our shows. They're all going to give them away differently at different times, but we're giving away 6 tickets tomorrow, 2 on Ben and Woods, 2 on Andy and Elsten, 2 on Gwen and Chris for the Aztec game on Saturday against Utah State. So we talked a lot about a lot of different things. We even had that question, of course, about the difference between criticizing and being a hater. I think too many people label criticism as just being a hater. I talked about that in the early on in the 1 o'clock hour. But to go back to baseball, and now's the time where you have like prediction articles and you have, what is the all-star teams going to look like? The way too early all-star team list, the way too early power rankings of the Major League Baseball season, even though the Padres don't even have a full roster yet. These are some of the things that fill the time during arguably, like I mentioned, the 2 most boring weeks of sports. With the NBA in the midway through the regular season, it's far away from April and, late April, early May when they start the postseason. Same thing with the NHL. College basketball still in that beginning stages, maybe halfway point of conference play. NFL only has the Super Bowl left. I know that's a big deal, but it's a 2-week period. There's not really a lot to talk about in the sports world. It's the toughest time of the year. It's beautiful weather we're having outside, but I can't really talk about that either. So you come up with these, these different articles out there. So I thought it was a pretty good one. Major League Baseball's top 5 breakout teams for 2024. Because if you look at last year's World Series, there were 2 teams that had really talented rosters. They had some stars in there. They had some good young players, and 2 teams that were not quite ready to compete yet. Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Rangers had spent money over the last couple of seasons. They had some young pieces filling in, but they still hadn't overcome the Astros in their division. The Angels were expected to be a lot better, right? Because they had Ohtani, they had Trout, and this was Ohtani's last year in Anaheim. Throw a ton of money at it. We got to see if we can roll. I think people were expecting them to be better. Seattle Mariners had a good season the year before with, the young superstar and Julio Rodriguez, and it seemed like they were really making a change for the better after their playoff run the year before. And so the Rangers with that team was like, well, they're really good on paper, but can they get over the top? They became a breakout team last year with Bruce Bochy at the helm. Absolute breakout team. Veteran manager, good 1-2 punch and starting pitching. Were good up the middle with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, and had some good players that they filled in from their own farm system. Led to a breakout team. We're expected to be good yet. Expect to be good in the future. Went out, won the World Series. The team they beat in the World Series, the Arizona Diamondbacks, were built kind of the same way. Had a couple of big name guys, not as big as some of the other teams in the National League. They're in a division where it was the Dodgers, right? They were always the powerful Dodgers, pissed off from last year of losing to the Padres and the NLDS, the year before. Always loaded with talent. They got the money to spend. They're always going to be around. San Diego Padres coming off a big NLCS appearance, right? They just signed Xander Bogaerts. They got the 4-headed monster down in San Diego. They were going to be a player. And then the San Francisco Giants, who traditionally have always been very good and were coming off, not too recently, a 100-win season for the Giants. And there was the Diamondbacks, the young Diamondbacks. And some good young players. A lot of good young players that were coming up, but it was still a year away. And they became a breakout team. Not every unexpected contender is going to win a title or even make it to the World Series. So what exactly is a breakout team? It's a team coming off a losing season that beats its established level of play by at least 10 games and winds up with a winning record. That is the description of a breakout team according to ESPN. Padres didn't really have a losing season. They were 82-80. I think they could beat its established level of play. I don't know if it's by 10 games. I mean, can this Padres team win 92 games this year? I don't know about that. Would you consider if the Padres win 92 games this season, would you consider them a breakout team? I don't know. But there are some other teams out there that ESPN put together as some breakout teams. Number 5 on the list is St. Louis Cardinals. Spent a lot of money in free agency. A bad year last year. A very non-traditional year for the St. Louis Cardinals. Every time that we bring up like organizations that the Padres want to be like, the teams that consistently compete, the teams that consistently have good star players and then facilitate those players with players that they developed. It's the Dodgers always we talk about. It's the Atlanta Braves we talk about. It's the St. Louis Cardinals. A very uncharacteristic year last year. They could definitely outdo what they did last year. ESPN lists the comp. 2019 Washington Nationals. 2018 season for the Nats wasn't the 2023 St. Louis level disaster, but Washington did tumble to 82 wins after winning 97 the season before. 2018 team also had the 9th highest team age, so it wasn't a young group. Nonetheless, the Nats went in big in free agency. They added Patrick Corbin and Brian Dozier, among others. End result, first championship franchise history. Very similar to what the Cardinals did this offseason. And went out and got some bigger names in their starting pitching to help their starting pitching front. St. Louis Cardinals can have a breakout year. What about the Washington Nationals, speaking of? and get that last year leap. Got a lot of young talent over there. A lot of young talent that was the Padres' young talent. You could make the comparison. The Washington Nationals this year could be what the Arizona Diamondbacks were last year. You have to go back very far to see the club the Nationals would like to emulate. Other teams, breakout teams, Pirates, Mets, Red Sox. We could talk more about that later in the week, maybe on Sunday as well. I'm Braden Suprenant. This has been Annie and Elsten. I've been filling in. Gwen and Chris coming up next. Love Annie and Elsten. Hopefully back tomorrow from 10 to 2. You can catch my show every Sunday from 8 to 10 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.